that you want them to do better. You want them to push. You don't want them to fall like under any category. You want them to push forward. And her sense of being a community, I'm about to cry. You can really see that. You know, you want to be a community and you push for that. You push for your students so they can have a community. I told you dance ensemble is family. So you push for that. You push for the family. You push for us being together, even though times may be hard, you know, the being there, present in time and space, was really something that I appreciate.
Life is gonna go back to normal, and what you gonna do when you look back from 4 years in high school and you know you didn't still push yourself?
Enjoy the moments, enjoy what you have, like be here, like be grateful for what you have, because like we couldn't have done this, we didn't have to do this, or like we were probably wouldn't be able to do this.
COVID kind of makes you do things you don't want to do, or like forces you outside of your comfort zone a little bit.
Be open, be different. It's okay to not just think everything's gonna be one way. It's okay to change.
I grow every day, so it's not like I'm just stuck in one position. I've learned a lot about myself through this whole experience.
It takes confidence to be a leader, to be able to step out in front of people and say, you know, this is the way that this should be done. Because you have to be able to take criticism from people that doing that as well, because everyone's looking to you.
If you ask for things, if you are open and you're willing to like put yourself out there just a little bit, that things will come to you.
Challenges do not change who you are. They reveal who you are. And what this has revealed is that during this time of great challenge, creativity still happens. Creativity still emerges. And that has been a very cool thing. So this challenge has not changed who we are, it's just revealed who we are.
My name is William Stinchcomb, and I've been with the Columbus City Schools for 23 years.
My name is Mr. Dorsey Birdsall, and I'm a safety and security specialist.
My name is Anita Roman, and I am a Columbus City Schools bus driver.
My name is Sammy Gonzalez. I'm a food service manager currently at Briggs High School.
I know that if I'm not there every day and on time, you know, that student may not have a ride to school. And that weighs on me heavily. And I take pride in knowing that my students can set their clock on me. I'm always, it takes a lot for me not to come to work. It's important to come to work every day, be on time, because we may be the only way that student gets to school.
Seeing the kids years later and having them come up to me and say how thankful and grateful they were and happy that, I kept them safe in the district, and, that I can't retire or leave the district until, their kids graduate.
This was one of the best decisions I've made in my life. I didn't expect to live for this, but I love being part of the Columbus City School as a family. I just think because the building represents our districts, for me to see how clean the building is, I could take pride in my effort, and to put the cleaning and the organizing of the building, it just makes me feel a level of pride.
Peaceful mind can accomplish a lot of things. And when a student is hungry, their mind is oftentimes on what the next meal is going to be. In an indirect way, we affect the students in the kitchen. They can accomplish what they have to in the classroom. And for them to accomplish that, oftentimes that's going to better their situation for themselves, their family, and their community. So in a sense, helping the student in an indirect manner with the food is something that I really enjoy.
Columbus, Ohio has so much to offer our youth. The growth you can obtain from being a part of this district is huge. There is such diversity and learning experience happening throughout our K-12 buildings.
I love to see the excitement in the kids' faces when they know they can start school the very next day. So it's exciting for the families. So I think it's very impactful because it gives them that first start to, learning and growing.
I've been working with kids all my life. Coming here, meeting the students, the relationships that I've built over the years is just phenomenal. I'm seeing students, still see students to this day that thank me. Just, thanks for everything you've done. Thanks for helping provide a safe learning environment. Thank you for the talks, and they're really appreciative.
The district provides training throughout the school year and a lot of information that's constantly updated, and it's always available to us. So that's very helpful in being able to, provide the best service to, our students and parents. The diversity in Columbus and inclusion, it's unlike any other place, really. There's so many different cultures and you come in contact with just on a daily basis, with our students and parents and teachers.
I've really enjoyed the last few years working here at CCS. It's got great benefits, the people have been great, and I wouldn't change it for anything. I've had other job offers, but I've turned them down because I just really like the people and I like working here.
Run to your computer and apply online. This is one of the greatest kept secrets in the school district, really. This is a great job. Just apply online, it's easy. We have, our training is excellent, and we'll do everything we can to help you get through, and you won't regret it, I promise.
I used to get calls all the time from people asking me about the station. What kind of music do you play? And the canned format was adult album alternative. And so I asked the music director, what does that actually mean? And he said, we play the good stuff. That was the end of his explanation.
Well, AAA music is heavy on the singer-songwriters and the Americana, but we also include blues music, jazz, other styles like world music.
It's not the same songs every other hour. And in 90.5's case, it's not even the same songs each week.
WCB is pretty unique with all the variety of music that we can play and the variety of shows that we have.
We've had John Prine, Ziggy Marley, Warren Haynes from the Allman Brothers. We have had Tedeschi Trucks. The list goes on and on.
The thing that we have at WCBE is experts in music that know where the good stuff is.
Homemade, locally produced programming is what we're all about, and just sort of sitting there and grooving out in a radio station, knowing that I'm doing the same thing with thousands of listeners across the state. I really dig that. I dig that sort of concept.
We're all over the map. It's great music. People that go, oh, I listen to everything. If you listen to everything, all you need to do is listen to us.
Hello to our entire Columbus City Schools community. My name is Salali and I am a student at Beechcroft High School. Before we begin tonight's Board of Education business meeting, I invite you to check out these highlights and updates from across the district.
Hello, and welcome to this week's Columbus Board of Education meeting highlights. Before we get into some of the highlights from around the district, I want to take a moment to talk to you about safety and security. The health, well-being, and safety of our students and staff are our top priority, and we want you to know we take it very seriously. After a recent incident at one of our schools, we are increasing our security measures to remain proactive and ensure all school campuses are safe and secure. The added layer of security measures in our high schools includes using handheld metal detectors in addition to using the evolved scanning detection system. I also want to take a moment to encourage all of our families to have discussions with your children about the dangers and consequences of bringing items that do not belong in our schools, our communities, or in the hands of our young people. Our actions have consequences. Our students have so much potential, and we want to see them succeed. That means making good choices. We are in the last few weeks of school, and it is important that we continue to stay focused on learning as we finish out this school year. We have so much to look forward to this month. We all know that appreciation for the work our staff does is more than a day, a week, or even a month. However, I want to take this opportunity to let you know that I appreciate you. All of you play a vital role in helping our students succeed in the classroom and in our communities. Next week is also Teacher Appreciation Week. Make sure to stay tuned as we share stories of some of the wonderful teachers we have in our classrooms. Teachers have one of the toughest but one of the most critical jobs. Each day you are shaping the next generation as you cultivate their academic success and support their social-emotional well-being. As a former teacher myself, I know the long hours and all the planning that goes into your work, and that feeling that you get when the lesson clicks for students, or also known as that aha moment. The work of a teacher never stops. Thank you for all that you do. You have a tremendous impact on your students, their families, and our community. Congratulations to Carter Robinson, one of our Superintendent Student Ambassadors who was recently awarded a scholarship from the Ohio Alliance of Black School Educators at their annual recognition banquet. Robinson, a Fort Hays Arts and Academic High School and Fort Hays Career Center senior, performed a spoken word poetry at the conference. Additionally, two of our principals, Rodney Johnson and Dr. Keisha Bates, were honored for their leadership. I was proud to be recognized alongside these amazing leaders by our colleagues from across the state. Over 2 days of intense competition, the Northland High School team number 5897 participated in 10 qualifying matches with teams from around the world. In addition to the 10 qualifying matches, students also participated in skills challenges with Northland's robot, Quickie, while making adjustments and revisions along the way. Congratulations to these students. I also want to congratulate a Whetstone High School junior who earned a U.S. patent for his invention. Damian Early noticed trash and recycling bins had fallen around his neighborhood and created a solution. His invention is a weighted base that supports a trash or recycling bin to keep it from overturning. After excelling in the invention convention competitions, his idea later earned the patent award at the national competition and an invitation to the global competition. I am always so proud to see our students succeed and get recognition for their amazing work. Congratulations, Damien. A few weeks ago, U.S. Secretary of Education Miguel Cardona visited Columbus as part of his Investing in America tour. Secretary Cardona stopped by Avondale Elementary, where he visited pre-K, kindergarten, and first grade classrooms. The tour showcased early education initiatives in the district. Later that day, education, industry, and economic leaders participated in a panel discussion focusing on the ongoing work to expand the talent pipeline. During the panel discussion, we focused on how we are growing and building work-based learning experiences to prepare students for the future. We are glad for Secretary Cardona's visit, and we're proud to showcase the amazing work of our early education and career tech education programs. I also want to extend a huge congratulations to our communications team at Columbus City Schools. Last week, our team brought home 22 Marks of Excellence, Distinction, and Best of the Best awards at the Ohio School Public Relations Association 2023 conference. The communications team won in categories for social media, video, e-newsletter, podcast, website, annual report, special purpose publication, writing, PR, and marketing plan, and photo categories. This is the latest and many wins for the team who has won national awards in the past. The team continues to carry on excellence and highlighting the amazing things going on in our schools every day. Thank you for telling the story of Columbus City Schools. Coming up this Saturday, May 6th, is the Ready for Summer Rally. CCS and the American Red Cross will help Westside families prepare and be safe for summer. The event will provide life-saving training and resources on first aid, home safety, severe weather preparedness, outdoor safety, health screenings, and more. The event will be on May 6th from 11 to 2 p.m. at Westgate Elementary School. May 13th is going to be a busy Saturday in the district. The final Pathway Express and EduHealth Mobile Health Caravan are arriving at Franklin Park Conservatory from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Students and families can enjoy the more than 40 acres of flowers and greenery, art and nature-based exhibits, and seasonal events. Families, make sure to check your email for the ticket link. Lastly, there is still time to sign up for this year's Summer Experience program. This year's Summer Experience offers the unique learning opportunities students and families have come to expect, and there are some new experiences in store too. So far, we have over 3,000 students registered for Summer Experience, and there is still time to register through the parent portal. The program is free and open to all pre-K through 12th grade Columbus City School students. These have been highlights from around the district for the May 3rd Columbus Board of Education meeting. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good evening. I am calling our May 3rd meeting to order. Please call the roll.
President Adair.
Present.
Ms. Beckerly.
Present.
Mr. Brown.
I'm here.
Mr. Cole.
Excused.
Dr. Pierce.
Present.
Ms. Reyes. And Vice President Vera.
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you. Will you please stand and join me in the pledge? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Board members, before we adopt our agenda, the superintendent has a couple more announcements around our safety and security, so I'm going to allow her to add on to some of the announcements we saw in the video.
Good evening, President Adair, members of the board. These past few days have been very difficult for our Columbus City Schools students, staff, families, and our entire community. We have schools dealing with unimaginable loss and parent concerns about our district safety and security protocols. And our school and classroom leaders are focused on end-of-year testing and guiding students through the final weeks of school. One of our highest priorities in the district is the safety and overall well-being of our entire CCS family. When tragedy or adversity impacts one school, we feel it across the district. Whether it's our care and wellness teams, school counselors, social workers, psychologists, community partners, we work diligently to assist students and staff who are struggling with mental health and social-emotional needs. We recognize the importance of being intentional with the support and resources available to our staff. The district provides mental health support and resources to all staff. Our Employee Assistance Program lets CCS staff connect with personal health advocates, and that contact information, along with other resources, are available on the Staff Wellness page on our CCS website or by calling 866-799-2728. In addition, the district's whole child or whole self approaches help keep our focus on the teaching and learning or the work that's happening in offices, but we also recognize that safety and security concerns can impact our day-to-day. We want our students, staff, families, and visitors to feel safe whenever they step foot onto a campus anywhere in our district. The district has continued to make investments in the safety and security team, related professional development, ongoing training, and the resources needed to ensure students and staff remain safe and can continue to focus on teaching and learning. The district's updated safety and security procedures have seen the introduction of portable walk-through metal detectors in all of our high schools. All students and visitors are screened to ensure that weapons or prohibited items do not enter our CCS facilities. In February, the district also introduced the new Evolve detection scanners to provide another layer of protection, in addition to the metal detecting wands previously adopted for athletic event screenings. Since the introduction of the district's enhanced security protocols, we have seen a significant decrease in the number of weapons and prohibited items on campuses. We recognize the additional screenings can impact the start of the school day and student arrival. However, it's important that students and families understand these protocols are critical to maintaining safety and preventing weapons or other items from being brought into our buildings. The district is also aware of misinformation circulating on social media stating security measures include stop and frisk. This narrative is false. At no time do school or safety and security staff physically pat down or search our students. We know that every minute of student instruction is essential in this work to create portrait-ready graduates, and district and school leaders are continuing to evaluate and adjust entry procedures to minimize delays. I ask that you please take a moment to have a serious, age-appropriate conversation with your child about their actions and behaviors. I hope you will also stress that safety is a shared responsibility. If anyone in our community, internally or externally, sees or hears something of concern, they should immediately report it to our staff. Anyone connected to Columbus City Schools can call or text our 24-hour anonymous Safer Together hotline at 844-SAFER-OH, SAFER-OH, or call Columbus Police at 614-645-4545. Again, I just want to reiterate that safety is everyone's responsibility. It's a shared responsibility, and we certainly want our community to partner with us to support our students and staff in creating safe, warm, and welcoming learning environments. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Chapman. Okay, board, on our agenda this evening, we have 5 public speakers. We have items on our board matters. We are expecting a report, no report from our superintendent. We do have a report from our treasurer's office. We have notice of public hearing on reemployment. We have our consent agenda. We have no comments on non-agenda items. We will have a short executive session this evening and adjourn. Is there a motion?
Motion to approve agenda as stated.
Second.
Been a motion and a second. Are there any additions? Seeing none, and without objection, our agenda has been adopted. We're going to now move into our public comment period. Each speaker will have 3 minutes to address the board. Our first speaker is Takesha Smith, here to speak on the new safety school measures. Board action requested. I want the board to rethink the random searches at high school. Good evening, Ms. Smith.
Hi, good evening. I'm glad to be here. Thank you all for being here as well and letting us come and speak. Thank you for your comments. They lead perfectly into what I'm hoping to talk about tonight. I am Takesha Smith. I'm the Executive Director for the Juvenile Justice Coalition here in Columbus. We're a statewide organization that just seeks to help kids who are at risk of or are involved in the justice system leave that system healthier and more equipped to deal with the challenges that they're going to face in leading a productive life outside of that. And I guess I just want to say up front, that work in the justice system, but also my past work in special investigations makes me incredibly sympathetic to the very difficult task of school safety. We understand the urgency of it. We understand how difficult this work is, the nuance, the complexity. But I want to say that all of that said, this process of random searches goes against the mission and vision, not only of Columbus City Schools, but of Ohio. It does not help serve the mission of safe schools, and I desperately want you to rethink what the unintended consequences of it are in the schools. I know later on you're going to hear more about some of the court cases that have already spoken to this issue, but the Supreme Court has already ruled on this, that random searches of property are a constitutional violation of Fourth Amendment rights of our kids. And I think that is obviously something that should be thought through. But even with CCS policy, when you think through the positive behavior intervention supports, the goals of that fly in the face of what these random searches do. In one way, so a couple of the things that PBIS states are goals of it, the positive strategies to reinforce desired behaviors. These are negative strategies that reinforce distrust between students and staff members of your school, and the most important aspect of school safety is trust between your kids and your staff, the most important thing. And so I think that that's a terrible violation of the intended purpose of school safety. Secondly, the purpose is improving academic and social outcomes. You've already stated, and we know that this is delaying kids from entering the classrooms. That's against the purpose of CCS entirely. And then finally, PBIS states that it wants to use evidence-based research and practices to meet its needs. There is no evidence that says that random searching significantly improves school safety. And as a matter of fact, we know a lot of research, a lot of credible research has been done that shows the exact opposite. And so I think that the truth about random searches is that evidence has shown us over and over and over again that people have an unfair inherent bias towards minorities, especially African Americans, that African Americans are seen as more aggressive, that crime is more likely, that they're seen as more unsafe. And so random searches are rarely random searches.
Smith, your time has expired. Okay. Thank you so much for bringing this information forward to us.
Absolutely. I will submit my full statement to you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next speaker is President Nana Watson from the NAACP. Topic, money from the superintendent search, board action. I want the board to answer my questions about the $250,000 paid to the law firm for the superintendent search. Good evening, President Watson.
Well, good evening, President Adair and members of the board and Interim Superintendent Dr. Chapman. You know, I just keep coming down here asking the same questions, so here I go again. At the last meeting, I asked the following questions and have yet to receive responses. As the board authorized $250,000 of taxpayer money to the tax law firm, how much has been allocated to the out-of-town search firm? Was the RFP issued for the search? If yes, what companies responded? How much was the communications contract for Falgren? Was an RFP issued? If yes, what companies responded? Rama Consulting is conducting focus group sessions. Was an RFP issued for this service? If yes, what companies responded? How much is the contract for Rama? The search firm you are using has completed or is doing a search for the Akron City School Superintendent. Cost for that search was $30,200. Yet, you paid the law firm $250,000 for a search firm and Falgren Communications firm and Rama for conducting the focus group. Lack of transparency as it relates to search process. That's what it is, a lack of transparency. And NAACP is also extremely disappointed in your lack of response, timeliness to responses, and a lack of accountability to this community. This could negatively affect our children. $250,000 could be used in our schools for our children to educate. Lastly, as a result of a background check, because we love to do background checks, one of the candidates, much to NAACP's chagrin, in 2020, a complaint filed in January of 2020 alleges that Dr. Stephanie Jones, head of the Special Education Department at Chicago Public Schools, engaged in a toxic work behavior meant to intimidate and reprimand her employees. Are you aware that she's a finalist for the superintendent position in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and she interviews May the 8th? Who is vetting these candidates? I am so ashamed of you all right now. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, President Watson. Our next speaker is Kaleem Musa, here to speak on PBIS, board action. I would like the board to listen to my presentation.
Good evening, President, Dare, Vice President, members of the board, Superintendent, Dr. Chapman. My name is Kaleem Musa. I'm a lifelong resident of Columbus. I'm a former district commissioner of NEAC, artist, and also a CEO of an organization here, amongst other things. But tonight, I'm a frustrated father. The amended board policy for PBIS states that an emphasis shall be placed on promoting positive interventions and solutions to potential crisis. Yet this same week, the board poorly communicated in the institution of stop and frisk tactics, which they are. My wife and I received a phone call from CCS and an email on Sunday around 10 p.m. stating that the following Monday, these security measures will be put into place. We felt appalled, disrespected by the communication. It felt sneaky. It felt like it lacked context, and we have felt immediate concern for our daughter, who can now be subjected to these random searches and targeted on ethnicity and gender. The Columbus Education Justice Coalition condemns the unconstitutional use of random searches, stop and frisk actions in Columbus City schools. We're a coalition of parents, educators, community members, and we're infuriated by this administration's action and the reckless implementation that it's had to use efforts that have historically been well documented to cause disparities amongst Black and brown students. There's psychological distress that comes from randomly being targeted, including disengagement, dropout rates increases. It's already been mentioned, State versus Polk and the Fourth Amendment. Our students are, their rights, they have rights, right, to their own privacy and to be secure in their persons. The parents, students, we have some demands. Not just myself, but the coalition, including Juvenile Justice Coalition, Pint-Sized Protesters, OPAL, Kaleidoscope Youth Center, All In for Ohio Kids. We want an immediate cease to the unconstitutional random searches of all students at Columbus City Schools. We want full transparency and community engagement prior to district-wide crisis intervention implementation. We want student involvement and decision makers on the Strategies for Student Success Committee. That's why I have my children with me right here, because y'all need to hear from the actual youth about what's going to make them safe. We can't make those assumptions for them. We demand the use of research and evidence-based prevention and intervention strategies for student behavior that align with your own framework in restorative justice. And we also demand that the board meets with us, Columbus Education Justice Coalition, in a public forum for a collaborative, action-oriented strategic planning session no later than May 31st. This is our city. These are our schools. These are our children. They deserve dignity. They deserve humanity. They deserve everything that every human being deserves. I understand the sentiment was well, but the execution was not. There's no infrastructure. It does not support the goals. We've already seen this a million times in a million places. We have to be more creative with our solutions. We look forward to working with you all to come up with these solutions. Thank you.
Thank you so much. The next speaker is Muriel Hinault. Topic, PBIS, board action. I want the board to listen to the community and research when it comes to our students and their mental health and safety.
Thank you, President Adair, Vice President Vera, Treasurer, everybody here. Thank you. I'm Marielle Hinault. I know it's difficult to pronounce some names, so apologies. I'm a CCS parent and a community organizer, and I'm a supporter as well of the PBIS Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports. And thank you all for prioritizing an approach that promotes the use of evidence-based academic and behavioral practices aimed at enhancing academic, social, and behavioral outcomes for all students. The problem is, as Kaleem noted, that recent policies implemented under the guise of school safety counteract the spirit of this amendment, specifically the random bag searches at our high schools. And look, I understand y'all are under immense pressure to do something. We need to keep our babies safe. I'm a parent too. But we should not be implementing tactics that over-criminalize our students and further traumatize our already traumatized children. These tactics exacerbate racial disparities in our schools. They've been proven ineffective. They don't actually protect our kids, and they reinforce the school-to-prison pipeline. These tactics have been deemed unconstitutional by both our state and federal governments, and with good reason. So instead, let's lean into what works. There's an immense amount of research about effective, trauma-informed, restorative justice-based prevention and intervention strategies that are proven to actually keep our schools safer. And one of the leading experts works up the road at OSU. Why are we not tapping into these resources? we have access to them, and utilizing them to make the right decisions that will actually keep our kids safe at schools, improve learning outcomes, and ensure the mental health of all of our students, which is a huge issue, as we all know right now. So I beg you, please stop with the knee-jerk reactions. These so-called school hardening measures, they turn our schools into over-police fortresses. They don't work. They breed distrust. They breed anxiety in our students. They unfairly single out Black and brown kids, and they just make the problems worse. All the research says that trust is paramount to building safe environments for our kids. And right now, our school district is effectively erasing any little bit of trust that's left. So stop with the random searches, please. Meet with the Columbus Education Justice Coalition. Work with the community, with the students, and with the experts to address the actual underlying problems. Make our schools truly safe for our babies. Affirm the equitable learning environments for our entire community in alignment with the PBIS framework that we're hearing about later today. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Our last speaker will be joining us virtually, I think. It is Amanda Carpaccio. That person can correct me, please, when they come on. Topic is PBIS, and I want the board to listen. I don't see.
Board Member Adair,
Yes, go ahead.
the speaker is ready.
Thank you. You have 3 minutes to address the board.
Hi, thank you, President Adair and the entire Columbus City School Board of Education. The name is Amanda Capriotto, very Italian. I know it's hard to pronounce. I'm a former CCS educator and a social work community organizer. Given my background, I too am a strong supporter of positive behavior and intervention supports, or PBIS. I understand the strong evidence that links PBIS to positive outcomes for students in schools, and I thank the board for complying with state policies regarding the usage of PBIS. However, as speakers before me have noted, recent policies implemented are not supportive of this PBIS amendment and can actually undo the good work that PBIS does in schools, specifically this random search and quote-unquote safety entry policy that suddenly took effect on Monday morning. As an educator, I'm aware of the importance of Tier 1 school-wide supports for positive behavior. In your amendment, you state that the administration is encouraged to use database decision-making to select, monitor, and evaluate outcomes, practices, and systems as it relates to a school-wide investment. I am encouraging you to actually use empirical data as it relates to PBIS, because this recent safety entry policy is in direct contradiction with PBIS practices. In fact, empirical evidence shows that increased contact with student resource officers significantly impairs the school climate and actually leads to more violent offenses, which I know is what you all are trying to prevent and contain with this policy. Random searches and stop and frisks, they're not the answer to increasing safety and positive school culture, especially for our Black and brown students. Under positive behavior intervention and supports framework, section C1 of this amendment that you're talking about at this meeting, you state that schools have a responsibility in regards to modification of environmental factors that escalate inappropriate behaviors. Searches from student resource officers are an environmental factor that will escalate inappropriate behavior and tensions. Trauma-informed care, restorative justice practices, and strong relationships between teachers and students, and PBIS implemented without student resource officers are empirically proven to reduce violence and increase safety in schools. Invest more money in these programs, staff, and training. That is your effective safety and security policy. And I urge you to follow through with your promises in this amendment to use evidence-based interventions on a school-wide level. We must end this new entry policy and random searches at high schools, as these are completely in contradiction with your positive behavior, learning outcomes, and school environment goals. The school environment is essential to increase success with PBIS. Don't tarnish the trust you have with students by treating them as potential criminals. In your goals to create success for all students, do not get lost in fear-based tactics that have no evidence of creating safety. CCS children, our high schoolers, they're counting on us to create positive learning environments, ones where they're treated with dignity and positive intent. Work with the Columbus Education Justice Coalition, local experts, students, families, and community members to make our schools actually safe, not just the next stop on the school to prison pipeline. Invest in policies that actually make kids safe and successful. Thank you for your time and thank you for listening.
Thank you so much. That ends our public comment. Excuse me, sir, you're not. I'm
Speak student testimony. I wasn't able to.
I'm sorry. I appreciate it. Are you a student?
Would you like to hear student testimony? Would you like to?
Sir, can you please submit it in writing?
It sounds like you're not actually interested in youth voices. It sounds like you do not care about youth voices. You don't care about youth voices. You don't care about youth voices.
You're the president, you can.
We're going to take a 5-minute recess. No, I can do it. Dr. Pierce, can you please join us so I can get started? By the time you walk up here.
Let's just start it. Leave her in the audience, and if she wants to sit out there, let's just go. She's playing right into this. Let's just go.
Okay, we are going to come back into session. I'm going to have the individual come back up, and I don't have your name on the list, so I'm going to need you to state your name and the topic and the board action.
Hello all.
My name is Ko Rupert, and I'm here to represent an organization called Central Ohio Youth Liberation, which is a radical collective of queer and trans 16 to 21-year-olds who engage in various liberation struggles across the Central Ohio region. I am also a class of 2021 alumni of Whetstone High School, and I wanted to use my platform today to share the words of my friend and fellow COIL organizer, Michaela Jackson. Michaela is a 17-year-old Black lesbian student at East High School. She could not be here tonight, but she sent me these remarks to read on her behalf. Stop and frisk is unconstitutional, and it's prone to racial biases. In my CCS high school full of people of color, it would be inevitable to, quote, stop and frisk a student based off of their appearance. I'd like to point out how many students have traumas related to being touched, and stop and frisk may cause many uncomfortable situations with students. It can cause aggravation with students that can allow officers to further justify mishandling them. School is a safe place for many young people, and creating an environment that they feel is at risk could harm any school community. Racial bias often creates police misconduct. The continued with unwarranted use and abuse of law enforcement is an extreme exercise of police misconduct, and added to this, their lack of consequences, lack of punishment, and lack of repercussions is enough to scare CCS students about going through a stop and frisk. Fear of law enforcement is common, and it largely affects minorities. This can put our schools in a situation where students can have negative feelings towards officers early on, creating a bad rep for law enforcement before they graduate. It's unconstitutional, considering the short notice for parents given stop and frisk and other factors. It is in violation of the 14th Amendment due process clause, and not to mention when an officer comes up to you and searches through your personal belongings, it can feel dehumanizing and downplay your personal freedoms. It can cause disruptions. Kids stopped for a search or stopped for a questioning on their way to class, interrupting a class session to advance towards students, etc. If you want to implement stop and frisk at our schools, be prepared to do the following. Ensure that all officers and safety staff receive training on implicit biases, de-escalation techniques, and cultural competence. Also take the negatives for students I mentioned, weigh the pros and cons to stop and frisk, and decide to listen to students' voices when proceeding. I, however, as a CCS student, stand against stop and frisk. I know firsthand how it can impact our schools and students. After she sent me this, Michaela also DM'd me some information about the current state of security at her school. We have lots of forced searches already. Students at my school aren't aware of their rights. There were many times in my years of school at CCS that students thought they didn't have a choice, and it was only from security, and it wasn't only from security, but also staff as well. So it already isn't safe.
Thank
I want
you.
to draw
Your time is up.
that this isn't the first time we've had these conversations. In 2020,
Your time is up.
I was part of the CPD out of CCS coalition,
Sir, your time is up.
which demanded
We allowed you to speak.
approval of SROs.
I allowed you to speak. Please submit the remainder of it in writing. The voices of our students are incredibly important, and I thank you for bringing that to us, and I encourage all of our students to come and speak and send their messages to us. We also have board protocol for a reason, and it was my discretion this evening to allow you to speak. That discretion is on a case-by-case basis. So I'm telling the community, if you would like to speak before this board, please follow the procedures and protocol that are outlined on the website. If you have any questions, please call our district. We want to hear from you. Just let us know, and we will let you know how to do that. Thank you all for sharing these very important messages this evening. They have been heard. We're going to move forward on our agenda. Okay, we're going to move into something happy. Now, actually, item 4, we have an award we are getting from the state auditor. I'm going to turn it over to our treasurer to give a little intro and invite the Auditor of State's office to come to the podium.
There he is. Come on up. I think that I might defer to let our Auditor State Representative introduce himself and begin with his presentation. And I'm sure there'll come a point in time where I will have an open mic again. So I'll be right back. So go ahead.
All righty. Thank you, Stan. It's my honor to be here. Well, by the way, my name's Joe Braden. I'm the West Regional Liaison for Auditor State Keith Faber, and it's my honor to be here tonight on behalf of Auditor State Keith Faber to present the Columbus City Schools with the Auditor State Award with distinction. This award puts the Columbus City Schools in a very select group. The Auditor State's office audits approximately 6,000 entities, and less than 4% of these are even eligible for this award. The Auditor State Award with distinction is presented to local governments and school districts upon the completion of a financial audit that meet the following criteria of a clean audit report. The entity first must file a report with the Auditor State's office by the statutory due date without extension on a GAAP accounting basis and prepare an annual comprehensive financial report. The audit report must not contain any findings for recovery, any material citations or material weaknesses, any significant deficiencies, uniform guidance findings, or any question costs. The entity's management letter must contain no comments related to any ethics referrals, any question cost less than the threshold for uniform guidance, any lack of timely annual financial report submissions, any bank reconciliation issues, any failure to obtain a timely single audit in accordance with uniform guidance, any findings for recovery, any public meetings or public records issues, and the entity finally shall have no other financial or any type concerns. This award represents the hard work of all your school employees and the financial staff who every day make an effort to attain accounting excellence. I want to recognize the board members, superintendent, that have done an outstanding job watching over every dollar here at the Columbus City Schools. And Stan, if you'd like to step up here with me. I'd specifically like to recognize your treasurer and CFO, Stan Bahorig, for his leadership, professionalism, and exceptional commitment to fiscal integrity. Congratulations, Stan. On behalf of Ohio Auditor State Keith Faber, I would like to present the Ohio Auditor State Award with distinction to the Columbus City Schools. Congratulations again.
I'll straighten the podium for the guys in the back. I really appreciate this award and thank the Auditor of State. As I said earlier this evening, this isn't something that I accomplished on my own. It was truly a team effort. And I know a lot of people say that. It seems like almost a cliche thing to say. But here, this district, we're the largest school district in the state in terms of many metrics: population, geography, dollars managed. We handle about a $1.8 billion overall budget. It is huge by anybody's standards. Thousands, tens of thousands of transactions that we go through in a year. And as I've said before, you've heard me say this, it's almost inconceivable to think that we would achieve a clean audit report like this. But again, it was the work of our staff. I'm going to take this moment to call some people up here, potentially embarrass them in front of the group, but I will call them up. And in no particular order, there are some folks here that probably aren't expecting me to do this, but kind of on the front lines of things, I believe there are, and you guys, somebody help me out here behind me, an Executive Secretary to the Treasurer, Diane Bowman. She keeps your board minutes. She works on our public records retention. She responds to public records requests, and you see here at almost every board meeting, and I don't know how long she's been with the district, but she's been with me for 9 years. So she plays an integral part in a piece of this award. So come up, come up. Also here, Jane Barnard, who works over in payroll, an executive secretary over in payroll. I would love to describe all the things that she does, but we don't have enough time this evening. But she works in the payroll area, doing kind of a jack of all trades over in the payroll area. Jane, come on up. See if I get the right order here. Stop me if I'm wrong. Three more people I want to call up, and they are really frontline managers and supervisors. I'm going to start with Phil Watson, our Financial Data Systems Administrator. And specifically, if you can recall, we were getting dinged a lot about some Kronos timesheet approvals. Phil has solved that problem, and it's directly attributable to his work. Second, I'd like to call up Greg Summers, Supervisor in Financial Operations, and he directly oversees accounts payable, accounts receivable, and all those transactions. And the work he does makes sure that we stay within policies and regulations and ensures that accuracy there. And another person I'd like to call up is Betty Airy, our payroll manager. And as you can imagine, we have a very large payroll with lots going on. A significant portion of your board agenda is dedicated to personnel, and it is her and her team that execute on those very specific instructions. Okay, they're all up here, good. Just as a matter of kind of the demographics of my team, how long have you been with the district? 30, Jane? 30 in December, Phil? 22 years. And now, watch this. 42 and 33. So this is a seasoned team of professionals that work in my department. So let's see, where do I go next? Let's move on to my executive leadership team. And I get to do this once in 9 years, so you're going to have to bear with me. Director of Data and Process Improvement, Director, see, I gave all these titles when we reorganized, and I can't remember them, but Becky Rowe is here. She's the Process Improvement arm. This is part of our Six Sigma team for process improvement. And so when things come up, part of this award is due to improving our processes over time, so she works with that. At the director level, we have in budget, we have Kristen Gregg, and then Executive Director Terry Addison. You've seen Terry numerous times before. This is the budget team. And over in operations, Karen Seibert, Director of Financial Operations. And quite frankly, the actual recipient of this award is Tito Reynolds, our Executive Director of Finance. He's here. And he was from the Dayton area, so I think they all thought that it was a Dayton thing going on. And certainly last, or among the last, Eric Roush, our Executive Director for Financial Affairs, that you well know, is here. And last but certainly not least, someone who joined the district shortly after I did, has filled, I don't know how many different positions. It basically, her role has been to take on just about anything I hand her way, and she's now serving as your Deputy Treasurer, Jenny Vanover, and these two have been instrumental as well. So this is the team that, oh, I forgot one. Shoot me, thank you very much. And really, this was the comparison I wanted to make. Jordan Hayes is here. He's in the position of financial data analyst, a position I created and use, there he is, use all the time. So several of the folks here have been here about 2 years. I think Karen and Tito joined us about 2 years ago. Jordan, how long have you been with the district? About 1.5 years, and just since January moved into his current position, and he's already made improvements in things, as you on Finance Committee have heard about changes and improvements to our 5-year forecast and our monthly reporting and automating a lot of that. So we have a wide array of experiences and time with the district, time with other districts. It's these folks that effectuate your policies, effectuate our procedures, know what the standards are for audits, and just keep us safe in terms of financial well-being and financial accuracy. And so I couldn't thank them more.
We certainly thank the entire finance team. I'm so glad that you all were able to be recognized because you don't get that opportunity a lot before the board and before the public. The work you do is incredibly important. And this award, like Stan said, is pretty amazing for an organization like ours. And it demonstrates your level of personal and professional commitment to this district and the students of this district. Ensuring that we are fiscally responsible ensures that we can do the things we need to do for our children, for our staff, and our community. Thank you so much, finance team. Thank you to the Auditor of State for recognizing us. And we're expecting another one next year.
Board President Adair, I'm sorry, I forgot to mention something. At your seats is a copy of our annual comprehensive financial report. I know you thought it was a doorstop, but it's not. That is the document that has received the Certificate of Excellence in Financial Reporting from ASBO, the Association of School Business Officials. This is the 32nd year in a row we've received that award. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to go to item 4.2, which is the second reading of board policy on 5200 attendance. I'm going to turn it over to Board Member Brown, who is chair of our policy committee.
Thank you. Policy 5200 on attendance is being presented for the second reading and adoption. It's being updated due to major changes in the law many years ago. It's also responsive to an internal audit that called the policy out specifically. Our current policy does not reflect current law at this time, and the attached version is a complete replacement. It reflects the most current Neola language, so all technical and legal changes are brought up to date, and some customization by our own staff. Bold and strike through will be significant and confusing, so it's an entire replacement. It is a required policy, and it's here for, as I say, adoption and approval, and I move that we do so.
There's been a motion. Is there a second? Are there any comments? Dr. Pierce.
Given the policy, given the procedures that have been implemented this week, they are greatly impacting our tardies that students are having for class. A component of this new policy relates to tardies. How, as a board, can we support this when we don't know how this new policy that's been implemented is impacting the level of tardies? So I move that we suspend taking action on this policy until we know how we will move forward with any types of procedures related to safety and security that will impact the number of tardies that our students have, not just for school, the start of the school day, but also the start of each class session.
I hear you, Dr. Pierce. There's already been a motion in a second, so I'm not sure you can move.
She's moving to table the motion.
Oh, to
That's what she's
table.
doing.
Okay.
It's in order.
If I could respond to that.
Is there a second? I'm sorry.
There's no second.
That motion dies for lack of second then.
I recommend that we proceed now. Certainly, there are activities underway that we will have to evaluate and do our best along the way to comply with our policy, our new policy as we enact it, and then to make adjustments if needed.
On the technical question of what happened with the students as we were doing this adjustment, I'm going to ask the interim superintendent to address that question. It's my understanding that students that were in line, no matter where they were in line and how long it took them to get in, they were in line by 7:30. They were not marked tardy. once they entered the building, even if they were entering after 7:30. Can you clarify?
Yes, that is my understanding as well, President Adair. And certainly, we recognize that there were on Monday and maybe and Tuesday, there were longer lines at 2 sites that we are aware of. And since then, the team has certainly made adaptations to their procedures so that we can make sure that we're mitigating any of the challenges with long lines, wait lines, so that our students can enter the building and be on time to school.
Is this discussion or just?
It's discussion.
Do we have evidence indicating how many students were in line at these particular schools so we can do an audit, which this policy states that we can provide for conducting random attendance audits to prove that these students were not marked tardy?
I do not have the exact number of students that would have been marked tardy but weren't, because the data that we would collect would be the actual tardy data. So for example, when we run our attendance reports, we would run our attendance reports and it would show who's present and who's tardy. So I do not have that data, if that's the question.
Point of clarification, and this is getting technical, so we don't want to belabor it, but if you're saying that the policy is that if students are in line by a certain time, that they will not be marked tardy. So then the assumption is that there is someone who is out at the line taking attendance and recording students' names who are in the line so they are not marked tardy. Is that in fact happening?
No. We are not taking attendance twice.
It's not that you're taking attendance twice, but you're ensuring that, another way to look at it is the students that come after that time, they're on a list and they're marked tardy. How are you making sure that you know which students are in fact tardy versus the students who are not, based upon the time frame that you're implementing the policy, based upon the students that are standing in that line at a particular time?
When the students are entering the building, we know who's entering the building and at what point, if there was a delay at the entrance of the building, we know at what point where the students that are entering, they are proceeding to class and they are not marked tardy.
So we're focused on the students that are in line at a particular time. That's what you said earlier, students that are in line.
We are focusing on all of the students that are within our purview that we can see, that are at the entryway, that are at the school, and those students are not marked tardy. So if they're not in line and they enter the building at another time after the arrival time, then they would go through the normal procedures of checking in the office, explaining why they're tardy, and at that time they would receive a tardy note, and their attendance would be taken in the system and marked accordingly.
So that's under normal conditions.
Can I try? Maybe can I try?
Yes.
So so earlier this week we saw pictures of really long lines, right? And so the procedure was, if a student was in line by 7:30, no matter where they were, how long it took them to get in, they were not marked tardy.
Correct.
So similar to like when we're voting, at the end of the time, a ballot or election official will stand at the end of the line to designate, this is the cutoff. Nobody else here was in line at the time, but all of you can vote. I think that's what Dr. Pierce is trying to get at. What is our procedure to know where the end of the line stopped and who was in line at 7:30?
So the goal is to not have a line.
Clearly.
The goal is to not have a line so that, our students can enter the building and report directly to class. But certainly, again, the pictures that we saw where there was an extended line, that was at one particular site on Monday and Tuesday, and we have not had any situation at another school that was even remotely similar to that. So there's no line outside of the building or wrapped around the building where there would have been a plan that needed to be developed to create a new process or protocol for managing a line outside of the building.
Can I ask a point of order? We're discussing this policy, and I'm completely confused now. Is there a provision of this policy that we're debating at the moment?
Yes, the tardy provision that is on page 2, there's a heading midway into the page that says tardies in bold.
And is there concern about some of the language here?
So the concern is that because we're defining what tardies are and how we are leveling our assessing tardies, that this policy defines what tardies are. We've had, we'll say, 3 days in which students may have been impacted by a policy or a procedure on our basis administratively that is impacting the number of tardies that they may have.
And is there language in this provision that you have concern with?
In general, because it defines what a tardy is, yes.
Is the definition okay?
Right now, it says, school staff, parents, and students shall make every effort to prevent tardy behavior. We have implemented a procedure that is not an effort to ensure that there's not tardies. We are, in fact, potentially creating tardies.
Okay. Are there any other questions or discussion points? Please call the roll.
I do appreciate, I will say I do appreciate the fact that discretion was given in terms of students who are dealing with family deaths and the amount of time that they can be excused from school to deal with the family deaths. I appreciate that.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
No.
Ms. Reyes? Yes. Vice President Vera?
Yes.
And President Adair? Motion carried.
Thank you. Our next item is 4.3, which is the second reading of Amendment to Board Policy 5630.01, Positive Behavior Intervention and Supports and Limited Use of Restraint and Seclusion. Turning it back over to Board Member Brown.
Thank you. Again, this policy 5630.01, dealing with PBIS, is here for a second reading and adoption. The policy has been updated to reflect changes that resulted from a complete rewrite of the administrative code in 2021. The new model policy, a new OSBA policy, a new Neola policy were all released shortly after the changes in law. Our policy was not updated at that time, therefore does not reflect current law. This is also a complete replacement, as was the last policy. Because of the significance of the changes, staff has weighed in. This was presented to the policy committee in the fall and had support as well as staff support. At the time it was presented, we also presented and looked at the OSBA version, and the staff, CEA, GPAC members present all chose this version. It is a required policy, and I move approval.
There's been a motion. Is there a second? Is there discussion? Dr. Pierce.
So again, given recent procedures that we have implemented throughout our high schools, I would again motion that we table this until we have thought through how those procedures are impacting our PBIS. And I would also encourage us to think about how the mandated professional development that we state in this policy will occur within 3 years aligns with our commitment to the BREAD organization to conduct and complete training and development around restorative practices. I would like to see alignment between both, our commitment to them and this policy.
So that is a motion to table. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a second.
If I could speak to that.
Sure.
I recommend that we proceed again, same basis as I said before, which is there may be some wrinkles that develop, there may be some learning that comes out of the situation we're currently in the midst of that causes us to go back and rethink and perhaps even to modify some provisions here. But these provisions are well thought out, well considered, and I think that anytime we adopt a policy, we could be in the midst of things that may affect our thinking, but that shouldn't dissuade us from going ahead and adopting a policy and a much better policy than what we have, which is not in conformity with law.
Remember Reyes, then Beckerly.
This is not debatable.
Whether to table or not table?
Not debatable. You either vote on it or you don't.
Okay,
Sorry.
thank you. Thank you, parliamentarian.
So, on the motion to table.
The motion is to table. There's been a motion, a second to table. Call the
Mr.
roll.
Brown?
No.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes? Vice President Vera?
Yes.
President Adair?
No.
And Ms. Beckerly?
No.
That motion failed.
Okay, now more
The main motion is back before you.
discussion. So I want to say, I agree with the fact that I think we need to look at it more, but I'm very concerned that we are out of legal compliance. And without having any policy that complies with our law is a big liability. And so that is why I did not want to table it. But I do agree that we do need to ensure that we don't, that we make policies our own here in Columbus City Schools and that they align with what it is we have defined as our priorities and goals as a board. So I definitely want us to look at this policy again and make sure we have student involvement and teacher involvement to ensure it fits with what we want to do. But I am, as a lawyer, worried about legal compliance, so that is why I will actually vote yes on this motion. Board Member Reyes.
Thank you, President Dare. That's where I was heading, not that I'm a lawyer. But to the interim superintendent, I know there's procedures here, processes. We heard from many in our community, especially about the procedure piece. I think that is something that we need to allow the administration to look at, I would hope, very quickly, and as asked by our community to ensure that we have voices from the community to help us, guide us in the processes, and then come back quickly with any policy or procedure changes that we may have to adopt. But I know that a lot of this is based on law and compliance, and we do have to update this. That does not mean that we cannot bring it back next week to vote on it again with any changes. But as asked by our community, let's, in the midst of a superintendent search, let's put that as one of our top priorities too. Thank you.
Board Member Beckerly, then Board Member Brown, and Dr. Pierce.
My reasoning is that I think we need the PBIS policy in place, and if there's a concern about how we're handling school safety, that should be through the lens of this policy as opposed to not having the policy. So I'd prefer to have the policy in place. And I'm not sure, certainly we have a lot to think about in terms of our public comments today, and we have a lot to think about in terms of, what we're doing to keep our students safe, but I don't think that has any bearing on whether we should have a PBIS policy or not. I think we agree that we should. Now, and as to Board Member Pierce's wanting it to be in compliance with the commitments we made to Brett, I see those as two separate issues as well. And I don't know that that has any bearing on this policy.
Thank you, Board Member Brown.
Just briefly, since I already said most of what I said, and I agree with those of you that want us to be in legal compliance. Just one comment with respect to Dr. Pierce's reference to Brett. I am unaware of any such commitment. I do not know that this board has acted to make a commitment. I don't recognize any commitment, and this policy has nothing to do with that. No, we didn't. Yes, we did. We didn't act on it.
Yes, we made a commitment 2 years in a row, sir.
Don't agree.
It's okay, but we did.
Dr. Pierce.
Thank you. I don't know who I should pose this question to, but how long have we been out of compliance by not updating this policy? Because there's a sense of urgency to do it tonight. So how long have we been out of legal compliance?
The rewrite on the law came about in 2021. Shortly thereafter, there was a new policy, model policy issued by the Ohio Department of Education. Thereafter, a new OSBA policy and a new Neola policy were released, and it's been since that time.
So based upon the information that you shared, we've been out of compliance for quite some time, but tonight it's urgent that we move and go into legal compliance, given the testimony that we've heard from parents, staff, and the voice of students that we are implementing procedures that are negatively impacting not just the culture and climate of our buildings, but the entire institution and framework of PBIS models throughout schools and buildings in our district.
I have a clarifying question. Is the hope to, because this policy regarding PBIS, we've been implementing PBIS in our district for some time now, I would say at least 7 years. Is the hope to revisit this policy and incorporate, because we have different policies, we've been, the safety and security measures that we've been implementing, it's a separate policy, it's not the PBIS policy. So is the hope to combine them? I'm just wondering how.
That's a great question, Dr. Chapman, and I think this is a worthy time to, I heard one of your quotes recently. You can move as, what is it, with the speed of trust, you move as quick. What is that quote that you say, with the speed of trust?
I didn't say with the speed of trust.
Or,
I was talking about the purpose of relational trust.
Okay, what's your quote?
And
you say it better than I say it.
And there was I was saying of having conversations and being proximate to the work, building relationships with our community and our stakeholders. In those opportunities, that's when you're building trust.
And you can only move as you move quicker with trust. The speed of trust will help you move things quicker.
That's not a quote that I've used, but I'm familiar with it.
But you're familiar with it?
Yes.
So in this particular instance, this evening, we've heard public comment from a variety of stakeholders and community members that have said that policies that we are implementing do not align with procedures that we are implementing, do not align with our PBIS. What the hope is that we as a board and as an administration take a second and table this and say, you know what, we need additional community input from stakeholders, from parents, and from students, and we need to think about this through the lenses of the challenges and opportunities that we face. Whether those challenges and opportunities were created on Monday, whether they are created next Friday.
So just to be clear, we have policy and we have administrative guidelines, which are procedure. We have multiple policies and procedures that are kind of touching this area. And so I think that it's about, looking at everything holistically and just making sure everything is aligning. Again, I think that it's necessary that we have the policy. Legal compliance is legal compliance. It's a shame that we were out of compliance for that long. And it is a sense of urgency because if we don't have this, we obviously can be in trouble legally. Vice President Vera, and then back to Board Member Brown, and then I'm going to close discussion, if that's okay.
Thank you, President Adair. I think, obviously we want to be in compliance, and I think that's extremely important. But I also want to be in compliance with the right policy. And I think that if we waited up until this point, in the light of what we've been dealing with most recently, I do think this policy needs to be looked at. And so that's my personal opinion, and I think that that's
the larger conversation as we have, I've looked at this policy and I have gone through, even just understanding some of our procedures. And to what we even heard tonight, there are things within this policy that we have not been able to really have dialogue about. And so for me, that's why I was of mind to take some additional time, another week, 2 weeks. I mean, I think a conversation would have been valuable to really, make sure that this is the direction we want to go with this policy. Not saying it's said and done. Obviously, we can go back to it. But I agree that in light of what we've been dealing with most recently, this policy, I do believe, deserved another look before final decision.
Is there a part, I mean, this
Yeah.
is the discussion, so is there, if there are particular parts?
I mean, it's already voted on, right?
No.
So- Oh, okay, I thought we just voted.
No.
That's why we have first reading. Give him feedback.
This is there was first reading, there was no feedback whatsoever from anyone, and now it's here for second reading and adoption.
So can you clarify, Board Member Brown, how exact, like, I know we got the policy in our emails, but I also don't really remember getting any specific communication from you specific to all these policies we're talking about tonight.
The two policies that are here tonight were discussed.
Or the governance committee.
Were discussed at the last board meeting, were recommended to the board at that time, and I requested that everybody take a look and consider the policies and provide me any feedback that they had. I've heard none.
I think, even in that regard, that's an undemocratic process. Just sending it to us, we function to review policies through our governance and policy
This
committee.
came through the policy.
Okay, but, hold on, everybody.
In this regard, we want to pull in.
This is the time to discuss. So if there are changes or something, this is the time. So let's not argue about who.
Well,
is there
in
something-
terms of the discussion needs to include our community. It needs to include teachers and students and parents and stakeholders. It's not a point for us to sit here and discuss it.
Board Member Beckerly.
Okay, I am profoundly confused right now. We have a PBIS policy that complies with state law that was being before us, that can I please finish? That we all agree is an important thing to have, including the people who spoke today, because they're calling us to task for our most recent procedures not being in compliance with PBIS. I don't think PBIS is in debate one way or another. We need to have it. And so what we do need to have, though, is if there's a discussion about a particular provision that we have a problem with. But the question about PBIS, yay or nay, as a policy is, I don't think, the real issue here.
So I would just state that the policy isn't in.
No. No. Sorry. Board Member Reyes, then Browns.
So, yes, so that's what I heard tonight, is that, and as a matter of fact, many of our speakers quoted our policy, and their request was, A, to follow it.
Exactly.
So let's start there. And then, as we build processes, procedures, make decisions, before we make decisions, bring them in to have a more robust conversation about when we do make a policy that impact, or a procedure or a change that impacts the policy. Or implicates it, that we bring the community in. And that's what I say, is like we needed to comply with the policy, and next steps are start talking about what does this mean? How does it impact our students? How do we keep our children safe? Because there are different ways that are necessary for the mental health of our students, but at the same time, a lot of us also hear from parents who have had children who have been impacted by safety measures, that want to make sure that their children are also safe. So how do we do all of that? You need to start with a basis. They quoted, if we listen, they quoted a lot of our policies, said follow them, implement them with fidelity, including the voice before we make a process or make a change that impacts our community, including our students and parents, to bring them in. That's part of what I heard.
Can I just point of clarification? To speak tonight in the public comment portion, based upon our board policy, you have to connect your comments to an agenda item. That was the most applicable item that they could connect their comments to. Their comments related to safety and security, specifically the tardies, the long lines, the inhumane treatment of our students, and PBIS on our agenda connected readily to that. So if you were to do a survey and ask the people who spoke, were you planning to speak and connect your comments to PBIS, or was that the most readily available agenda item that you could connect to so you could speak at the beginning of the meeting versus at the end of the meeting? I'm sure they would say, we connected to the PBIS so we could speak at the beginning of the meeting.
And I'd like to say they connected to the PBIS so that, not that we strike it down or set it aside, but that we raise it up and honor it.
Let's raise it up.
Okay.
Move
And
with
vote.
the speed of trust.
Okay.
And get
Okay.
stakeholder comment.
We're done. Okay. Please call the roll.
Wait, Madam President,
No.
you had given me the opportunity to speak. I've been waiting
Yeah, you did.
patiently.
You did.
We've all spoken a lot. Is there anything, very briefly in closing, as the policy chair committee?
Yes, I would. I continue to strongly recommend. This policy is what leads our look at the procedures and the protocols. We must get this policy in place in conformity with law as required. And then we can take a look at the procedures, at the protocols, at the steps, whether it's being implemented properly or not. If it turns out that something has to be looked at again, we've got the capability of doing that, but the sooner we get this in place, the quicker we'll be in compliance and have a tool from which to take a look at procedures and protocols.
Okay, thank you.
And I call the question.
Please call the roll.
Dr. Pierce.
I am not going to support implementing a stop and frisk policy so I can then go back.
Wait a
and-
minute.
That is completely
Out of
Dr.
order.
Pierce.
So no.
Dr. Pierce, you are completely out of order.
I take it.
That is completely out of order.
I take it. You have my vote, which is no, and you have my.
Thank you, Dr. Pierce. The vote has been recorded as no.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Vera?
In efforts to be within compliance, and we will certainly revisit, I will vote yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Let's go to item 4.4, which is the first reading of amendment to Board Policy 5200.01, attendance absence. Over to Board Member Brown.
Thank you, and I hope this one is simple. Tonight, we adopted Policy 5200 pertaining to attendance. This Policy 5200.01 simply rescinds the previous policy. It's just a separate step to make it cleaner that the policy we adopted fully replaced, and this will rescind the prior policy. It is being recommended tonight, and for not only a first reading, but to move forward and waive the second reading and adopt this tonight.
There's been a motion to,
There's
Separate
separate
motions, right?
motions.
They amended their bylaws, they no longer require 2 readings for when they do the amendments. You guys amended your bylaws, so you don't have to do that anymore.
so we don't have to waive it?
You don't have to waive it, you can just do it once. You amended your bylaws.
And I move adoption.
Okay. Been a motion to move for adoption. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion. Please call the roll.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Vera?
Yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
And Dr. Pierce?
No.
That motion carried.
All right, thank you. Our next series of agenda items are to do recognitions, and we have a lot of recognitions of our staff. And I don't remember who I gave what recognition to, so look at your awards, board members, and whoever has the resolution to recognize May 1st, 2023 as National School Principals Day. And if we have any principals or people representing our principals, if you could come up to the podium. And it looks like it is Board Member Brown with this resolution.
Thank you. And it's nice to see a few principals here while we recognize and honor you. Recognizing May 1st as National School Principals Day. Our principals are incredibly important to our operation. You are incredibly important in each of your buildings for the oversight and assistance and support to your teachers and to all of our students, and we thank you for that. I move to approve the resolution recognizing May 1 as National Principals Day.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Ms. Reyes? She stepped away, sorry. Vice President Vera?
Yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
That motion carries.
Thank you. Board Member Brown is going to bring you that resolution, and if you'd like to say a few words, we'll let you do that. Or you don't have to. We do appreciate all the work of our principals.
We do.
Thank you for the recognition. We appreciate their support.
You're welcome. Okay, item 4.6 is a resolution to recognize May 1st, 2023 as School Bus Driver Appreciation Day. And I know we have President Carson, Ms. Wiley, any other bus drivers or transportation team members. Takes a whole team, And board members, I'm not sure who has this resolution.
I do.
Oh, it is Board Member Beckerly. Go ahead.
I move to approve the resolution to recognize May 1st, 2023 as School Bus Driver Appreciation Day.
That's a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
Vice President Vera?
Yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. Go ahead, Board Member Beckerly.
Yeah, I thought we would say something after we voted.
Yeah, you kind of didn't. Go ahead.
I'm sure I messed it up somehow. I just want to say thank you. I had the pleasure of working closely with many bus drivers over my years as a teacher, and you're a part of the team. You were the first person our students see and the last person they see, and you're integral to the communication, and you impact our students' lives in many, many positive ways, and we're grateful.
Thank you. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
President Adair, Dr. Chapman, board members, and everyone here else. My name is Stephanie Wiley. I am the president of Local 336, which consists of 533 members. Our local consists of bus drivers, child care attendants, intervention aides, and the radio dispatchers. I truly consider this to be an honor and a privilege to stand here before you this evening. Please don't forget, it takes a whole package of workers, that I just mentioned a few minutes ago to make the whole wheels of the bus go round and around daily. Please remember our local, because this has been a rough school year for us. You've seen us on the news. A lot has been going on in the community, and it has been impacting us across the board. So just remember us as we're out there before the sun rises and we're out picking up our precious cargo daily. Also, as we go day to day on our daily lives, because we are all a family and we all are one. Thank you again for the honor, and we consider it an honor and a privilege, and thank you again.
Thank you, President Wiley. Thank you, President Carson. Our next recognition is item 4.7, which is a resolution to recognize May 8th through 12th, 2023 as National Teacher Appreciation Week. And I believe we have President Caniglio and Vice President Hayes. And if there are any other members of CEA or teachers, please join them. And who has this resolution?
Me.
Oh.
That's why I got mine. Teachers spend countless hours preparing lessons, evaluating progress, mentoring, assisting, and coaching students, and performing community service. Teachers make public schools great by working to open students' minds to ideas, knowledge, and dreams, by serving as listeners, explorers, role models, motivators, and mentors. Teachers keep American democracy alive by laying the foundation for good citizenship and by molding future citizens through guidance and education. So let it be resolved that the Columbus Board of Education does hereby honor and values the many contributions of Columbus City Schools teachers on the lives of our students and families and their positive impact on our community. Let it be resolved that the Columbus City School Board of Education hereby recognizes May 8th through the 12th, 2023 as Teacher Appreciation Week.
There's been a motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Please call the roll.
President Adair?
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Vera?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. And as Board Member Reyes brings around the resolution, President Caniglio, I'll turn it over to you.
Honorable Board President Adair, Honorable Board President or Vice President Vera, and honorable board members, thank you so much. You know, one of the best things about being the president of the Columbus Education Association is I get to go out to probably every job site where our teachers are at and watch the amazing work that they do. They're giving it their all every single day for our students, and it's just really wonderful to see the impact that they have on kids. Just even watching the teachers line the kids up in the hallway is amazing to see. I did volunteer recently to do some recess duty for kindergarten, and I was like, I'm not doing this again. No, they do amazing. It's amazing to see the work that they do, and thank you so much for the recognition. I appreciate all the kind words. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Our next resolution is 4.8, resolution to recognize May 5th, 2023 as School Lunch Hero Day.
And I have that one. Thank you so much.
We have members of our food service team and President Carson. Go ahead, Dr. Pierce.
Thank you so much. So again, this is a resolution to recognize May 5th as School Lunch Hero Day. So whereas the team members that prepare and serve school meals to our students help to nurture our students and contribute to their academic success through their daily interaction and support. We thank and appreciate you, and I motion to approve a resolution to again recognize May 5th as School Lunch Hero Day.
There's been a motion.
Second.
Motion and a second. Please call the roll.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Vera?
Yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. And as Dr. Pierce is bringing you that, Board Member Berkeley wants to say something, and then I'll turn the mic over to you.
I just happen to have a personal lunch hero story that I want to share. Vice President Adair and I, Vera and I, were at the bus compound off of Morse Road, and the drivers were eating these wonderful salads that they were excited to be eating, very healthy, and they had gotten them from these lunch heroes who were preparing salads not only for our students but also for our employees. And I just was lucky enough, coincidentally, to run into them the same day because I had to stop down at the downtown high school, and it was a really lovely meeting, and it was just really nice to connect the dots between the bus drivers that were eating these fabulous salads and the people who had prepared them for them, and it's just truly a hero. So thank you.
Thank you. My name is Donna Ragland. I'm the president of Local 143, and I'd like to, good evening, President Adair, Vice President Fair, Superintendent. Thank you very much. Not only should we grow our own, we should feed our own. Our classified employees, they don't have time to leave offices or sit down and have a full lunch. They're huddled in a corner somewhere, you know, trying to get a few minutes in. And we just like to try to show our appreciation to their hard work. So we work even harder to make sure they have something very good to eat. So thank you very much.
Thank you, President Ragland. President Carson, did you want to say something?
I just would like to thank you on behalf of the 3,000-plus members that I have the honor and the pleasure to represent in Columbus City Schools. And anytime I get the opportunity, I like to remind you guys that most of our students see a classified employee at least 7 times before their day actually gets started in the school building. So I am proud to be one of those 7 that some of our babies will probably see before they actually get to a classroom. So thank you for always remembering the work that we do. And I am Lois Carson, and I, along with these ladies behind me, we help educate Columbus City Schools students with the work that we do on a daily basis. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And our last resolution of the evening is 4.9, resolution to recognize May 10th, 2023 as National School Nurse Day. I believe this is going to go to Vice President Vera by process of elimination.
That's right.
And we have Dr. Klein, who is joining us virtually, and we also have President Caniglio and Vice President Hayes from CEA joining us at the podium.
Thank you, President Adair. I have the honor to recognize May 10th, 2023 as National School Nurse Day. Whereas the school nurse is a valuable member of the school team, providing an experienced health professional responsible for serving high-quality wellness care, maintaining the link between health and learning daily, and making a positive difference for children. Whereas school nurses act as liaisons to the school community, parents, healthcare providers on behalf of children's health by promoting wellness and improving health outcomes for our community's children. And whereas school nurses diligently adhere to high standards of professionalism and continue to work to acquire the knowledge, skills necessary to respond to ongoing change in the education and healthcare delivery systems. So I motion to approve the resolution to recognize May 10th, 2023 as National School Nurse Day.
It's been a lot of seconds.
We love our nurses.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Vera?
Yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. President Caniglio.
President Adair, Vice President Vera, honorable board members, it's my privilege to accept this on behalf of our school nurses. They are truly amazing. You know, they're always kind, they're always welcoming. I've never been into a nurse's office where there wasn't at least one student in there. But you know, when there's an emergency, they are fierce advocates. They're there. They're on the front line. They're going to take care of folks. And they truly are an amazing part of our school community. So thank you for honoring them tonight.
Thank you.
President Adair,
Dr. Klein.
I would just like to add that on behalf of our 132 nurses, not only do they assist our students, but they assist our parents as well through healthcare decisions, medications, first aid, but they also collaborate on safety plans and IEPs. They also collaborate with other healthcare providers. They are simply phenomenal. I have had the privilege the last year and a half of working with them, and I can tell you personally that they do things for our children that are remarkable. Thank you for this honor.
Thank you, Dr. Klein, for those remarks, and congratulations to all of our staff that we recognize tonight. We appreciate you, and we appreciate all the staff, regardless of if you got a recognition tonight. I know that some of the weeks are to come soon. We've had some in the past, but we're doing our best to make sure everyone knows how valuable and just respected and appreciated we know that you know that you are to us. So thank you so much, board members, for reading those resolutions. We're going to now move into item 4.10. We're going to do a monitoring coaching session. We have Ashley Paz, who's going to be joining us virtually from the Council of Great City Schools. She is our coach. And we are going to do a coaching session based on our last monitoring session. We did not finish that and the coaching part. And so I asked Ashley to come and give us some feedback. In the back, could we make her big on the screen, please? Thank you. And I'll turn it over to Ashley.
Hi, good evening. How is everyone tonight?
Good.
Well, I'm happy to be here. I did share a coaching memo with everyone on the board and Superintendent Chapman earlier, partially yesterday, and everyone on the board today, that gave kind of a much more in-depth just narrative around coaching and for your progress monitoring sessions and the work that you're doing as a board in general. I provided that longer coaching memo because I wanted to be able to keep our conversation tonight succinct around the monitoring sessions and specifically the monitoring report that you all get in advance of your monitoring sessions. Before we get started though, does anyone have any questions about just the technical aspects of the coaching memo that you received, or did anyone not receive it?
Any questions on the memo? Board Member Brown.
I did receive it. I do have questions, and I'd like to do those with you offline.
Okay, and that's, I'm glad that you said that because I want to make sure that everyone understands that I am always available to provide that one-on-one coaching with you outside of the board meeting so that we can have a more detailed conversation and not take up the time of the entire board. And of course, all of your wonderful faculty who is there.
Thank you.
So for your coaching session, I really want to focus on the aspect of your monitoring report. You've gotten a lot of monitoring reports over the last year and a half of doing this work. It's been since it was January 2021 when you first received training on doing the progress monitoring with Mr. Crable, who is my colleague here at the Council of Great City Schools. So I know that's been a long time. I know you have had updates since then, but the majority of what I provided in my coaching memo was specific to why we do monitoring. Why is progress monitoring important? And that's really the reason that I'm here, is to help you continue to remember the why. Why is everyone here to begin with? Even going back to why do school systems exist? The whole reason that we're here is to help children learn, to make sure that they are achieving the outcomes that our community wants to see from them. Your monitoring reports are an opportunity for you to discuss those outcomes in the public, in a conversation with you all that your community can observe. And it's a two-way flow of information, not with the community, but between the board and the superintendent. This is when you really get to dig into the details about how students are learning, what students know and are able to do in Columbus City Schools. So the coaching that you've received in the past, and still the coaching today, is that you go into these progress monitoring sessions and you have a conversation about your monitoring report. The monitoring report is going to give you information about the current reality of students in your district. This is, it's going to tell, it should be clear about what you're looking at. It should be, the data should be clear, the trajectory that that students are currently on and where you hope that they will be should be clear. And then there should also be a clear interpretation from the superintendent that details the root cause of what that current reality is. And if you're off track, if you're not reaching the annual targets or the quarterly targets that you've identified or that your staff has identified that you expect children to be at, then there should be a substantial plan that is articulated to help get you to get the district to where you want to be. So at the end of this conversation, one of the things that we recommend is that the board actually vote on whether or not to accept the report. You currently do vote to accept the report, but you do this at the beginning of the monitoring session. And I think that's just because, and after having spoken to several of you, I think there has just been some communication about the purpose of doing that acceptance. And so I wanted to just remind everyone that when you're accepting the report, you're not just accepting the report saying that, yes, these elements are literally here on the report, meaning that there's a heading that says this is the goal, there's a heading that says this is the data, a heading that says interpretation, and a heading that says plan, but there's actually some substance to those things. When you are accepting the report, you're also not going on the other end and saying that we approve of these things, that this is the plan and we all agree completely with the plan, we approve the plan, and that's what we want to do. Remember, the board doesn't actually adopt the strategic plan. The board doesn't adopt the superintendent's theories of action. But what you are doing is you are accepting the report, saying we have received a plan, we have received a report, and what we have received tells us where we are, lets us know that the superintendent understands where we are, and that the plan that was presented to us has a is realistically likely to be able to actually help us get to where we need to be. And so I think that is kind of going back to like getting down to brass tacks for your board, moving that action, the action of accepting the report from the beginning to the end, so that you've actually had the conversation, that you've done the monitoring, and that all of that has happened. Then you're accepting the report. You're going to avoid some, so one, you're actually getting to continue the conversation. You're having a conversation about what the plan is. And then if it's not sufficient, and that's something that you all have to figure out. That's why there are 9 of you. One of you may think that it's insufficient, but the other 8 may think that it is sufficient. We actually don't discourage that kind of dissension on the board. I think that that's actually a really healthy thing. But that's why there are a number of you there, not just one of you, so that you can come to a consensus and that you can actually vote and agree whether or not the plan is sufficient in getting you from point A to point B. I feel like I just blurted out a lot, so I want to stop and give a moment to answer questions.
Questions for Ashley? Dr.
I'll defer to Carol.
Okay. Oh, go ahead. Reverend Beckerly?
So the recommendation is that as a board, we vote in relation to the theory of action when we are accepting the report at the end. Our board has not done that before. Right. I wonder about the implementation and execution of that as we do it as a board, one, but then I'm also concerned about how that will impact how the administration moves forward with a viable plan to address the concerns that are highlighted during the monitoring report. I'm concerned about that recommendation.
Okay. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you want me to answer or respond to that?
I would like you to respond to it in regards to what types of support training will we as a board receive and our administration receive to ensure that when we vote based upon the theories of action that are presented to us, that we are doing it from an informed position.
Yeah.
I mean, for example, several times I've indicated that attendance only, in many instances, accounts for 30% of the variance. What is accounting for the other 70%? Now, in a couple of our past monitoring reports, Dr. Chapman and her team have brought in other theories of action to explain more of that variance. But again, I think it's going to be a challenge for us as a board to get to the point where we're really believing that, or we're confident in the proposed theories of action actually resulting in the change that we expect to see in student outcomes, because we're always at this point where we want correlation between theory of action and student achievement. And as Dr. Brown has stated, and as we know from all of our monitoring reports, it's quite difficult to make that direct correlation.
Yeah, so so thank you for asking that question. And I think that, so like with everything, the devil's in the details. And I want to highlight that so you do have a relatively new interim superintendent. One of the things that is important for this board to understand is y'all have been doing this work for a couple of years now, year and a half, where she is still kind of on the front edge of learning this process. So one of the things, and I really like that you mentioned the quote earlier about change happens at the speed of trust. That's actually so that's based on Stephen Covey, who actually informs a lot of the work that we do here at Council of the Great City Schools and Student Outcomes Focused Governance, because there is a very integral part of this process that actually happens before you even get to the monitoring session, and that's beforehand. So the board should be receiving the report well in advance of the board meeting, and you do, and then having the opportunity to review it and then to ask questions about it, to understand where, to get some of that clarity around the technical aspects of it and the tactical aspects of the report. And if you see beforehand that maybe everything doesn't add up, or that you may have some additional questions about the likelihood of the theories of action actually achieving the goal that you have, the time to have that conversation is so one, have the conversation, yes, have the conversation during the progress monitoring session, but also to have the conversation in part with your superintendent beforehand so that they can be prepared at the progress monitoring conversation. And I actually really appreciate some of the feedback that you have given Dr. Pierce during the last several monitoring sessions that I've observed, because you're right on track. If you ask the question, this theory of action is only going to get us to about 30% of our goal, what's going to account for that other 70%? That is a reasonable expectation for the board to have from the superintendent. Ideally, you can have that conversation beforehand, and then she has an answer during the monitoring session. But if not, then you may vote to not approve the report. And again, not because you disagree with the theory of action. Your disagreement or your approval or non-approval of the theory of action isn't what's in question. It's your agreement of whether or not the theory of action is sufficient to get you where you want to be.
So I have just another quick follow-up question. One of the things that we've discussed as a board is that, in essence, our monitoring reports and the discussion and dialogue that we have around them, very fruitful and very beneficial. But in essence, it can, in many ways, be a public evaluation of how the district and the superintendent is performing. As we move to approve a report, I think that's one thing, to approve the receiving of the report. But as
we say accepting the
accepting
report.
receipt, well, I'm using receiving for, because we can accept the report, but at the point that we start to not accept the theory of action, that in essence can become a referendum on the performance of the superintendent publicly. And that can conflict, because if you're a superintendent that has an analytical lens, you can say, well, you accepted this number of reports, but then you can get very into the weeds, nitpicky, and say you accepted 10 theories of actions versus 7 theories of actions because you weren't consistent in accepting all my theories of action. That impacted my performance as a superintendent. So therefore, that makes all the action that we took as a board around the monitoring null and void, because we in fact did impact the superintendent's ability to implement with fidelity the entire model.
Yeah, so again, you're not actually approving the theories of action, you're accepting the report. So the report, I've accepted this report that has all of these theories of action on it. This report, when you take that action and you accept the report, you're saying to the superintendent, what you have told us clearly explains what your interpretation of the situation is and your plan for moving forward. So and the plan is sufficient. And that's the thing, is the plan is sufficient. You're not approving the actual theories of action. If you don't approve the report, that doesn't mean that the superintendent has to go and have all new theories of action. You're simply accepting the report.
Yes, but then you said we should also give additional vote or thought around the theories of action.
No, it's just the fact that the theories of action are on the report, and if they are sufficient, if the theories provided are sufficient. So that means, does it get to that full 100%? You mentioned attendance being a theory of action, past one, and get you to 30. What's going to get you to that 100? I can like attendance, I can not like attendance. That's not, I can like that theory of action, or I can not like that theory of action. That's not the conversation. The conversation is that theory of action going to get us to where we need to be? That's what you are accepting or not accepting. And
I guess that's where my question is, because even in our last monitoring report, we were presented with a couple, more than 2 theories of actions, one around attendance, one around our MTSSs, one around our social emotional learning, credit attainment. At what point are we informed as a board enough to know that that variance that's explained by each theory of action is getting us to the 100%?
Yeah, so that's I can't answer that question for you. That's a determination that you as a board have to make. So generally what boards do in their monitor, so the board president at the end of the monitoring session, they will say, okay, board, do we feel like this plan is sufficient in getting us where we need to go? And again, this is if you're off track. If you're on track, then the interpretation is sufficient, and having if they can articulate a plan to keep you on track, that's nice, but the plan is really the most important when you're off track. So that's one distinction I want to make. But you as a board have to determine what is sufficient and what is not sufficient. And I even spent some time over the last week asking several of my colleagues, do we have some kind of black and white theory, like some kind of rubric, so to speak, that says, like, this is what's sufficient, this is not? And the resounding feedback has been, it really has to be the decision of the board. The board really has to be the ones to decide whether or not they're comfortable with the plan as presented, whether they feel like their need to know has been satisfied.
And in that conversation that you've had with colleagues, and maybe this was a part of that conversation or maybe not, but was there any indication that there was an alignment between strategic priorities and the theories of action? Like what is the North Star that should guide or inform how theories of action are even being presented and brought to the board?
Yeah, so your theories of action absolutely should be aligned with your priorities because they are literally theories of action that are going to help you achieve the priorities that you have set. So if third graders reading at grade level is a priority for you, then your theories of action should be pointed at that priority. And I actually do have a rubric that I'm happy to provide with you with that to kind of help walk you through that if you would like. It's not something that we at all.
We lost you. Let's see if she comes back. Okay. So I will say, board members, Vice President Vera and I spent an hour and a half on Friday in our coaching session along with Dr. Chapman. And we personally were struggling through this as well. Especially in the way that our last session kind of ended. Because if you remember, the last question brought us back to the chart and trying to figure out if the theories of actions that were presented was going to help us move the dial up on the gap that the district was projecting, because they were saying that even though we saw progress, we were expecting a little decline based on just history of data, but it was still under. And so, we didn't quite get the response that was on the paper, right? We got a different response through a theory of action that was explained more in detail about more of an individualized approach, which was not quite what was written down in the report. So, I was personally struggling with it because I'm trying to figure out if we're monitoring, Ashley's back, if we were monitoring the theories of action or if we were monitoring the actual movement to the benchmarks that we set. And then it came back to what are we approving the report, accepting or approving or whatever the word was about the report. So we talked to Ashley about this for an hour and a half, and I'm still not clear. I'm still not sure what we're doing. One, I want to say I agree with progress monitoring. I think we do need to do this publicly and do it in an accountable way. And I attribute it to us actually growing a little bit and learning more about what we're actually doing so that we can have this deeper discussion about what it is we actually want to monitor and what are we actually holding our superintendent accountable. I know what AJ told us in the past, but this is about making it our own and what feels right to us to know if we are making progress. And so that's where I was personally. See, Ashley's back. Ashley, I was just recounting what our conversation was with Vice President Vera and Dr. Chapman on Friday.
Yeah, thank you. And I'm sorry, I have no idea what happened. I just lost you all of a sudden. So I just caught the tail end of what you were saying, and I think it's actually a great place to pick up. So the question was, what are we actually monitoring in these progress monitoring sessions? Is it the benchmark of where we are relative to the goal, or is it the theories of action? So to answer that question, what you are actually monitoring is the current reality for students as it pertains to the interim goal or the interim guardrail, whichever one you are looking at in that specific monitoring session. So what you're looking at is where you are. So you're the current reality. If the current reality is on track, then it's easy. Then you can have a great conversation about understanding from the superintendent, how do we learn from this success? That's generally a very different conversation. But I want to go back to the analogy that we use often of the coach going back and playing the video of the game. So at the end of a game, win or lose, coach will go back and replay the tape. We asked the question, why does the coach do this? Coaches do this because they want to learn about the calls that they made, both in times of winning and in times of falling short of the mark. They don't do this to sit down and beat themselves up. They don't sit down and think of like, oh, which player on my team am I going to make run extra laps this week? Some coaches may, but that's not what effective coaches do. Effective coaches actually look to see what they can learn from their successes and what they can learn from their failures. And I don't like to say failures, but that's just not hitting their, not reaching the goal that they wanted to. That's the reason that monitoring happens. When we're not on track, it's really, really important that the board understand what the plan is to get us back on track. In your district, you call these strategies theories of action, and that's fine. You call them what you want, but these theories of action that are presented are essentially the plan. These are the superintendent's plan to get you back on track. And so, what you need to know at the end of the monitoring session is the plan that was presented. Is it sufficient in getting us from point A to point B? Can we realistically expect that we will get from here to there by the end of the year or the next monitoring session or whenever they say? Sometimes that conversation is going to have a recommendation from the superintendent that they may want to switch course. And that's okay, but that switching of courses has to come from the superintendent. That has to be their decision to make. And then if, at the end of it, at the end of the year when you're monitoring your goals, you will have already had a lot of conversations about the interim goals. So if you end up at the end of the year and you're still off track with your goal, then you at least know going into it that you're going to be off track, and it's not a surprise. If you get to the end of the year and you are surprised by the outcomes that you've received, then that's a different story. If the superintendent isn't giving advice on, or if they're not presenting theories of action and strategies that are going to actually, that demonstrate that the district is being challenged, that change is being made, then that is problematic. And right now is the time for your board to be having this conversation because you are about to bring in a new superintendent. And so getting this clear now is the time to do it. So the report that the memo that I sent, it goes into a lot more detail, but it's also kind of long. So I recognize that. So that's one piece, but even going back and rereading the monitoring, and I linked them in the report. There's one document called Effective Goal Monitoring, and I think that it's even something that should be shareable with your community so that they know what's going on as well in these conversations, because these conversations are for them as much as they are for you, the board, because they deserve to know what's going on, and this helps everyone get on the same page at the end of the day.
Ashley?
Yeah.
Can I share my understanding of this, and you can tell me where I'm right or where I'm wrong?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so first of all, there's two things that are confusing all of us, and this is partly because of how we approach this early on. And I think it doesn't matter who advises or how. There's whether the format of the report is accurate and has all its elements. And that's the thing we ask in the beginning. Does it have a bar graph? Does it say the court? That is just form. That's not substance. And that is not voting to accept the report. That's just acknowledging that the report is in the proper format. So I think we've conflated those two things, and that's part of the problem. So what we're talking about now is not whether the format of the report meets a format criteria, the form. We're talking about whether we're going to accept the report as And the criteria for accepting the report is, does the reality match the vision? In other words, are we on track or are we not on track? If the reality doesn't match the vision, meaning we're not on track, am I okay so far, Ashley? Then the next question is, and this is in what Ashley shared with us, is there growth toward the vision? And if the answer to that is yes, then the question is that growth sufficient to get us on track by the next monitoring interval? And that third question, is it sufficient, has two parts to it. Before we get to the theory of action part, we have to be comfortable that the superintendent has demonstrated an understanding of root cause. Are we really understanding the problem? And then, and only then, can we decide if the plan is sufficient to get to the goal or the target or the interim progress measure. So part of where I think, can I just finish this one thought, because I think this is where we all got hung up last time. We weren't getting to the root cause conversation. So it was hard to decide whether the plan was sufficient because we only got so far about what the cause was. It's attendance. Well, how do we know it's attendance? Attendance because attendance is a problem. We weren't talking about root cause for lack, how attendance is tied, or even the root causes of attendance, chronic absence for high school kids, and if we were monitoring 10th grade. So I think part of that, and every time we said, let's talk about, root cause or attendance, we kind of got back into this conversation of we're talking about it district-wise and not for this particular population. So I think it made it harder when Jen said, you're expecting this decline at the end. How do we know your strategies are targeted to closing that gap? Because it's going to be bigger than it is right now based on past strategy. There wasn't a really good answer for that, partly because we hadn't really nailed down what the causes of chronic absenteeism were for this population, so we didn't really know. Now, I actually think, and this is where I screwed up in the session, Ashley, because I said I think the strategy is really the matriculation teams. And I wasn't supposed to say that, because I'm not supposed to say that. But that was where Dr. Chapman started talking about getting to the root cause. And so I think to get back to what we're trying to figure out is the real question is, do we really understand the problem? Because until we know we really understand the causes of the problem, we can't decide whether the plan is sufficient. And I think we get stuck at not really understanding the problem. Sorry, I'll stop talking now. But is that right?
Yes. Yes. So yes, that is actually absolutely right. The whole purpose of the board having this conversation is so that you can really wrap your head around understanding what the problem is. And when I talk about understanding the problem, I mean really, really understanding the problem and looking at the root cause, not just the superficial things that, not just the superficial elements that can drive the failure of the goal, for lack of a better word, but actually understanding the root cause, what is causing it at the very beginning. The most fundamental issue at hand.
Dr. Chapman.
Good evening, Ashley. Clarifying question. We know that there are many factors that contribute to student achievement and improving student outcomes. Is the goal of the monitoring report or the monitoring session, we have 60 minutes, to test each theory of action? Is that the goal, or are we just really looking at the theory of action and the data, certainly looking at the progress that we're making? If we're making progress, like how are we, is there a portion of the monitoring process that we should spend more or less time on? I guess that gets back to when we're accepting the report, are we proving that we tested the theories of action and we prove that each theory of action this is contributing to this percentage of the variance for the student achievement? Like, to me, that's a totally different conversation. We're not trying to correlate the data for each theory of action to the amount of growth and the achievement that we're saying. We're looking at the growth overall and looking at the strategies that we've identified or theories of action and saying that this is a reasonable plan of action to get to the improvement in student outcomes that we intend to see.
Yeah, so to answer your question, it is what the board should be, so what you should be focusing your time on is is really going to change from report to report, because some of them are going to be pretty, they're going to be pretty blatant, and others are going to be more nuanced. And so if I were in your shoes, I would spend more time on the front end explaining what the cause is, what is the root cause for why we are not either way, why are we not on track, or why are we on track? If you're not on track, then you will spend some additional time talking about the theories of action, because you have to explain what your plan is to get you back on track. That's really it. So do we know, you're answering the two fundamental questions. Do we know how we got here, and what are we going to do to get away from here? And so we don't want to get too detailed into, like, you don't have to actually get into like correlations
Right,
and
statistical significance or anything
yeah,
like that. No.
Yeah, you don't have to get into all of that. I was providing that more of just an example based on what Dr. Pierce had used. But it's still, the board does need to have a reasonable understanding of what the plan is moving forward.
Can I use a quick example?
No, I'm gonna ask the board a question, because I feel like we could keep doing this all night, because I don't think this is the format we need this in, this discussion in, or to take this next step. How is it that the board would like to continue this discussion? Because I'm still confused personally about what exactly we're doing. I think Dr. Chapman is confused about what now needs to be in reports. And it still doesn't feel like we are doing this in a way that's making sure we're hitting our benchmarks. So, because we have Stan's report that is, we have an executive session, and I had only budgeted 30 minutes for this. So how would we like to continue this discussion, board members? Would you like to do some individual one-on-one coaching with Ashley and then come back as a group and talk? For me, Ashley, I think it'd be helpful if you could show us like examples. I think talking in abstraction is hard. Like if you could show us like points in our reports, or even show us places in our monitoring sessions where you think we're doing something good or not. I think that would be more helpful for us to see what we're doing. And maybe that's something we can do in the individual coaching. But I'm going to open it for a few minutes to hear ideas from the board. Dr. Pierce.
Thank you. So I would like us to rethink the framework that we are using to guide the theories of action, given that that will be a part of how we are accepting reports now. While root cause is important, there are a number of root causes that will impact student outcomes. However, within this district, we have strategic priorities that our interim superintendent has committed to making. We need to, as a board, empower the interim superintendent and future superintendent to be able to implement those strategic priorities to move the needle on student outcomes. All of our theories of actions cannot go down to attendance and MTSS, especially when you have objectives around engaging school-based family engagement teams, evaluating school environments, implementing professional learning across cross-section of cultures and intrinsic motivations. There's a number of actions that we as a district have committed to that are never connected to the theories of actions to move the needle on student outcomes. So I say, we use that, again, our strategic priorities, as a framework for our theories of action. And just one last thing. We have data, district-level data, to show that students who participate in extracurricular activities, be it athletics, music, theater or arts perform better academically. That never comes to us as a theory of action. How are we going to engage students in these extracurricular opportunities? But if we use the framework of the strategic priorities, it would come to us as a theory of action.
Dr. Pierce, all the strategies that we've recommended are incorporated in our strategic plan, and some of which are also incorporated in the board guardrails as well. So just wanted you to know that we're committed to lifting up the board goals, the guardrails, and the strategies from our strategic plan.
I think, again, looking at the strategic priorities that are outlined here, even on our website, a lot of those haven't been brought through our theories of action.
You're right. There are probably 50 strategies in our strategic plan. We're monitoring 2 goals, one of which is early literacy and one of which is graduation. And the strategies that we monitor in those 2 goals, the strategies are all pulled from strategies from the strategic plan and the guardrails. MTSS is part of the board guardrail. It's also a part of priority number 1, whole child supports. So just want to acknowledge that these strategies are aligned to our board goals and guardrails and our strategic plan. But I'm naming, there are lots of strategies in our strategic plan. I do not think that we have room in the monitoring report to list all the robust list of strategies in each one of those, to meet each one of those goals, but that is taken into consideration.
Okay, thank you for that. My question was, board members, how do you want to procedurally take the next step? Is individual coaching with Ashley and then coming back? Is there some other way that we need to continue discussing this, not tonight?
I think individual coaching, I'm wondering if, rather than one-on-one, I don't know, Ashley, what you think, if like 2 or 3 of us together. Ashley's got an idea.
Go ahead, Ashley.
That's actually exactly what I was going to recommend. So in these conversations, it generally is more helpful to have 2 or 3 people at a time. So that way they can board members are able to kind of feed off of each other and bounce ideas off of each other. And that is immensely helpful in moving some of this work forward.
No, that's more meetings, more coaching for some of us who have already done coaching and are at a good space. If this is a matter of us determining if we're accepting a report based upon the theories of action being able to move the needle, I, for one, know that theories of action need to touch more of the strategic priorities. If I see that, I'm fine. I don't need additional coaching to tell me to look for that because I already know what I'm looking for.
I think others among us are confused.
Okay, so I'm gonna have Ashley reach out to all of you to either say what Dr. Pierce just said, because we need to collect where everybody is, right? And what it is, we're thinking that we need so that we can really figure out the next steps. Okay. So Ashley is going to touch base with you. If you'd like a one-on-one or small group to have a deeper dive in this discussion to figure out where are you personally in the understanding of this, because we do need to set clear direction for our team about what we are expecting in the report and in the monitoring session. I'm going to ask you to do that this in the next week, and I know we're extremely busy, but please take 30 minutes if you can, or send her an email if you are crystal clear with what you want or need, just so that she can get everything. So then when we sit down with her, we're meeting with her on Friday, and Christina and Dr. Chapman and I, and so we can figure out the next step then on how we approach this. So if I could have all of you do that, that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you, Ashley. Bye. Okay, item 5. We're not expecting a report from our superintendent, and you gave us some updates. Do you have anything you'd like to say?
So first, I would like to say, the monitoring process. One of the quotes that was mentioned in the feedback was, what happens or what we discuss in the part of the monitoring process is an indication of what's happening in the classroom. And so certainly everything that we, include in the report certainly is an indication of what's happening in the classroom, all in an effort to improve student outcomes. And just on that note, certainly would like to just acknowledge the hard work of all of our staff, because they're the ones that are doing this work and making sure that we keep our focus on student outcomes. Everyone, the goals, the early literacy goal, the graduation goal, our portrait of a graduate goal, that those goals have been clearly communicated and cascaded throughout the organization, so everyone knows what our focus is. And that is aligned also to, you know, our strategic priorities. So just want to just say thank you to the teams, our school-based staff that are really working to make sure that they're continuing to lift up this work and prioritize this work. And despite how the report lands at this table, the work is still happening in our schools each and every day. So this is a learning process for us, and we'll continue to learn and grow in this work together as we find the right way to have the conversation and what structure or format works best for us. Thank you.
Thank you for that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know that when we sit and learn out loud, as Dr. Brown says, sometimes messages don't come clear or people think that we aren't committed. I mean, we are committed to these goals of graduation, third grade reading. We're probably going to be adding a math goal soon, everybody. And so we are committed to these goals and definitely appreciate the cascade down through the organization and the hard work of every single teacher all the way up to Russ, who's crunching the data for us. This is a technical question about how it is we decide as a board to monitor and hold our direct reports accountable. And so, you know, we're learning how to do that and do that in the best way possible. But it's certainly, we appreciate all the work, and we are making gains. Like, that's the thing. We are doing much better because of this framework and because of putting these goals at the priority of what we're doing. So thank you, everyone, for that. All right, we're going to go to item 7, which is our treasurer.
Hello.
Hello.
How much time did you allot for us? 5 minutes.
Whatever you need, Stan.
We have 2 reports for you this evening. One is the quarter 3 report. As you know, the Finance Committee sees monthly financial reports each month when they meet. But because many of the variances kind of work themselves out quarter to quarter, at the board level, we felt that it's best to take those snapshots and bring them to you for discussion. So we've got that, the third quarter report for you, and then also, after we pause for some questions there, if you have any, we can roll right into the presentation on the 5-year forecast. This evening, I'm going to have my team present 95% of this to you. So Deputy Treasurer Vanover will take the lead on this and walk us through these reports. She's joined by the unforgettable Jordan Hayes, our data analyst, which I apologize for somehow missing him, but he's going to have a part in this as well because he's part of that preparation phase. And so you'll get to hear from them, and they can answer your questions. So I'll turn it over to Jenny.
Okay. Thank you. To go through the quarterly financial report should be fairly brief. As Stan has reported multiple times throughout the year, the Finance Committee receives the monthly reports, but we bring the quarterly reports to the board because a lot of the variances that occur are a function of somewhat timing and plan design, so this helps alleviate any confusion or any concerns over variances that are very easily explained and frequently are addressed within the quarter. So for year-to-date results, our total revenues are currently $32.5 million above plan. Total expenditures, as you can see, are $33.7 million below plan. Those combine to put our cash balance around $66 million above plan. And see, this is where this is going to come in. There we go. My phone likes to time out. So, on total revenues, quarter to date, we're fairly on target. The year-to-date totals is a slightly above on the revenues. The primary drivers for the revenues increase, there are 2 things. One actually worked as a negative, so to speak, but our variance on the settlement payment, or the settlement that came in February, That came in a little bit under plan, about 8.5 million, I believe, which is around 1.3%. But the phase-in for the disadvantaged pupil impact aid, or DPIA, was accelerated during the same window of time, and that helped offset the reduction that we experienced in the real estate numbers. Okay. This provides a graph by quarter to show the variance both as a total in dollars as well as a year-to-date total in dollars for revenues. So you can see the largest variance occurred in the first quarter. The variance in the quarter 3 was pretty nominal. And then we have the quarter-to-date and the year-to-date variances as a percentage of the total revenues. So again, you can see the third quarter activity on the revenues was pretty minimal, not a lot of fluctuation, not a lot of changes. For the total expenditures, quarter-to-date were slightly below plan, and year-to-date as well, slightly below plan on expenditures. This is primarily driven by, as you can imagine, the salary and benefits line, which is 85% of our expenses. We have come in a little bit lower. We also, during this quarter, did the charge-off to credit the general fund and charge ESSER for Wellness Week. So that impact was realized in this quarter as well.
Interesting.
Again, we've got graphs that show the variances for both quarter-to-date and year-to-date, both as a percentage as well as a dollar amount. And again, this is kind of just a summary, again, of the total for revenue being a little bit above plan, expenditures being below plan, and that impact on the cash balance at fiscal year end. So again, fairly uneventful because there wasn't a ton of impactful activity in the third quarter, but this is where we are currently. Questions?
Questions? I had a quick question. Vera?
Jenny, at the beginning you mentioned, I think it was around 8 million under plan, like something, that piece.
On the real estate settlements.
Yes, do we know why it came in under after?
I don't know that I'm guessing that it would probably be tied to potentially the timing of collections.
Okay.
But until we see that second half collection and how the plan was laid out, it's kind of hard to gauge that. Again, the key piece to keep in mind is that it was within 1.3%. This, to Stan's point, and I believe you mentioned it in FAC, this is just the first time that we've ever been on the other side of it. Okay. Normally, we're a little above. This time, we just happen to be a little below.
Okay, so. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. So now I believe we're doing the forecast, correct?
Yeah, we'll move on into the May update to the 5-year forecast.
Okay. Am I starting this too?
Yep.
Okay. This is still me? All right. So Jordan's primary role when he moved into his new position was to get himself familiar with all of this and, let's see, what's the right word? Clean up, whatever. I don't know what the word is.
I'm afraid they're going to throw me under the bus because the fellow who is younger than my children and only been here 2 years is because I did the forecast. We do it in-house, and I developed it, 8 years ago, and over time just kept adding things, and it got kind of messy. And so I'll throw myself. It was time to kind of wipe the slate clean. It looks the same, but it functions very much different, and that's what Jordan is going to explain what he did. But first time he ran through this, he threw me under the bus, and everybody in the room laughed. And so
it just proves the purpose of the position that he holds, right, and the value that it brings, because the reason there's cleanup needed is because, as Stan was putting that together over the last 9 years, he gets interrupted, he gets sidetracked, he starts, he stops, he plugs something over here. That's what it lends itself to when you've got a dedicated resource that can spend 8 hours a day on that task. It's easier to keep it that way. So.
And full disclosure, I mentioned tonight experience, And one of the neat things about the team is we have experience, we have a mature part of our team, and we're also bringing in young talent that, you know, I said this, I think, at Finance Committee. It really is a different set of eyes on this work. I grew up, I was educated under a completely different system and methodology, and Jordan comes in, and I'm learning things. He's taking experience from me, and it's pretty cool. It's a lot of fun. We enjoy going through that whole process. And because we all love Excel spreadsheets, we get real excited. Jordan will do something and we'll go, wow, I've never seen that before. So it's good. So go ahead, Jordan. Tell them what we did.
Yeah, I mean, the spreadsheet, the original forecast, it was just complicated. It just is. The current one's complicated. I think there's always room to improve them. You can even the one right now, I already have ideas to make it better. You know, so. The new model, the main changes that we made was it references a couple of our external spreadsheets, like the fair school funding model. As Stan said, most forecasts are contracted out by districts. They'll have a company do it for them. Well, the spreadsheets that it references are also typically contracted out by the same process. So us doing it in-house allows us to really go in and touch those details, you know. So if you have changes to the state revenue formula, like we see all the time, if you have changes to just legislative changes like House Bill 1, we're able to make those changes and see what it would do to the district. So that way we can just plan better, you know. So, you know, we just put a lot of time into it, and I think that as we continue to improve, we'll just get better and it'll pay us back. Hopefully, it'll pay us back.
And we use this a lot to verify, you know, when something comes out of the State House or it hits the paper, and they go, well, this is, you know, they always call and say, how's this going to impact Columbus City Schools? And I usually say, I'll get back to you on that. And while we might say that now, we can get back really, really quickly, and oftentimes if there's been a change and we hear about it or Eric picks up on it, he'll fire off an email. And Jordan gets in a little bit earlier in the morning than I do, and typically there's an answer ready and waiting. So it's, I think that's a real benefit to us. And you will see, board members, as we get into the next phase of our levy planning, that the interactive nature of the forecast now is even better than what I've done for you in the past.
Okay, so moving forward, this again is an update to the forecast that was approved in November. Clearly the easy update is to add the almost 7 months of actual data into the forecast for the current year. Again, the high-level areas that we touched in terms of making adjustments to the assumptions that are built into the forecast are in the property tax area, state aid, changes in the formula that have come through. Other local revenues, I know I have heard on numerous occasions the reference to the pilots and the impact that House Bill 126 has had on those payments coming in on a much more accelerated basis, as well as your salary and benefits, the Wellness Week discussion that we just had in terms of the savings to the general fund by charging it to ESSER, as well as the non-personnel budget reduction exercise that we have gone through over the course of the last few months, or that the academic team has gone through. So getting into some of the details on the revenue side, property tax, as I mentioned before, $8.5 million under plan for the current year, or the current fiscal year, I should say. And again, that's around 1.3%. Normally, we're a little above. This year, we just unfortunately happen to be a little below. The impact on that over the 5-year course of the forecast is around just under $45 million. And then we also had a small corresponding reduction for homestead and rollback. So again, the net impact at the end of the at the end of the 5-year forecast in fiscal year 27 is about a $47 million reduction in the state property, or the property tax revenue. On the state aid side of things, this was actually, I know 7.2 million doesn't seem flat, but for a budget of our size, it seems fairly flat. Again, that that DPIA phase-in was accelerated, and that had a huge impact. And then we also have impacts to the funding formula and change in the local share, which now that we're on a formula, that has a much bigger impact. When we were on a guarantee, it was much easier to forecast because you figure out what it is and you set it flat. Now we're actually having to evaluate and look at enrollment and AGI and property tax or property evaluations and see how that impacts the funding formula going forward. So those have all been factored in. The other revenue item that, again, I mentioned before was the pilot payments in light of the House Bill 126. A lot of our intended to be long-term pilot payments came in all at once in anticipation of the implementation of that change in law. So that has had an impact on this year, but it's not going to have any future impact. So it's a one-time hit, isn't it? And that's how it goes forward. So
We had already taken in that drop in the November. So this is just changes from our assumptions in November. So for people who want to know the impact of eliminating those private party settlements, I think I pulled out about $12 million a year out of the forecast.
okay. On the expenditure side of things, again, salary and benefits is the primary driver, 85% of our budget. We came in, again, looking at both everything current up through the time that we put this together and then factoring out and estimating the remaining payrolls for the course of the year. We estimate to be around $25.4 million below plan. That includes the variance. So when you net out that $8 million that was charged to the ESSER fund and relieve the general fund, that actually puts us to the $17.4 million range, which is around where we've been for the last few years. We primarily attribute this, we estimate that it's a function of vacancies and the fact that we are typically budgeting and estimating based on full staffing day one, and we know that that's not necessarily occurring. So again, the impact across the 5 years ends up being about a $145, almost $146 million reduction. Again, this isn't an expense, so this is actually a help to our cash balance. The non-personnel, again, as we mentioned, the academic side was tasked with a $35 million reduction to try to address some of these other factors that we are looking at. While the $35 million reduction was not realized, about an annual reduction of around $16.6 million was achieved and is maintained throughout the forecast. So that actually gets us, that plus the fact that we came in slightly under plan this year gets us to about a $60 million increase to the forecast. So again, it seems contrary to believe that you would have an increase on an expense line, but given that the full amount of the reductions were not realized, it's actually an increase, if that makes sense. So hopefully that's understandable. And then this is basically just a table that kind of compiles all of these into one to show the cash balance at the end of the forecast in fiscal year 27 based on the November forecast, and then all of these impacts, individual impacts that we've had all across the various line items to show the impact to the now May forecast going forward. It's about a gain of $72 million over the life of the forecast. So while we're still in a negative cash balance scenario, it is closer to zero. So it's at least a step in the right direction going forward. So this is just a graph that demonstrates the comparison of May to November for the total revenues. As you can see in FY23, there's a little blip, but as you can tell that once that little blip happens, our lines are pretty similar, so it's not having a huge impact going forward. And same type of graph with expenses. So again, in 23 we have the blip, and then everything gets back very similar on track to what we had in the November forecast. This is showing the revenue over expenditures. So in 23 you can see that it, you have again that adjustment that's being made to account for the actuals, and then again we're back in line moving forward. So the primary impact to the forecast was the actual data. It doesn't have a huge drastic impact on the 4 years going out. This shows the ending cash balance as it related, or as it was presented and approved in November. And then you can see the impact as we move to May, how it's improved. It moved up. We got much closer to zero in the final year of the forecast, and obviously everything else moved up as well. Again, this is your ending reserve cash balance, which we estimate at 60 days. So again, this was the picture in November, and with the adjustments to the assumptions and the additions of the actual data for this year, we now have, instead of having 4 of 5 years below zero, we now only have 2. So again, it's not a total fix, but it's at least trending in the right direction. This is you.
This is me.
This is Dan.
And so what I always like to do, which is a big part of doing a forecast, is looking at trends. Yes, the absolute numbers are very meaningful, especially when all those numbers dip below zero. But trending is very important. On a linear basis, it looks like this. It's pretty easy to see that those graphs are all downward sloping. And as I've said, once you turn the corner like that, it doesn't reverse itself, typically. So we have to do something. And the next graph is just a kind of an exponential extension of that, so that if this continues, and I always like to go out another 5 years to see where those levy cycles take us. Actually, we're going from what was it? A little bit under 200 million in reserve cash balance below zero, and this trends all the way down into that 1.2, 1.4 billion dollar. That's not going to happen. This is just a graphic to say once it turns, it accelerates on you. And that's why I always come back and I say, when we look out this far, we know that if we start now and we do something today, it's much easier to reverse that trend the sooner we move. Unchanged assumptions from November. $15 million transportation penalty every year is still in. I think I mentioned at FAC that, and Attorney Brown, you can explain what we got, but we had this action that prevented them from deducting it, and it went permanent until the case is actually heard. Right. So whatever we call that injunction, that's what we got.
Preliminary injunction.
Preliminary injunction, okay. And in the House Bill 33, there's a kind of a fix to the transportation penalty. It doesn't go away, but instead of being deducted a whole day, even if we miss one student, it proposed a per student penalty.
Oh.
So that's, if they want to penalize us, that seems much more reasonable and understandable that it would be based on the number of kids. So but what we have, so that's a big assumption that can help this picture. 4 years of that, $60 million improvement, and you saw what we did in the cash balance. The ESSER advances are just a cash flow and issue. They go out 1 year, come back the next year. They're still in there, but they go away in 25. We currently have 0 FTE of ESSER rolling over. We'll know for levy planning that assumption will undoubtedly change. But for the May forecast and what I knew when we put this together, that stays. We still have 2.5% in wage increases outside the terms of the collective bargaining agreements, and your $20 million annual transfer to the capital fund remains. So, 26 is still positive. We're negative in 27, but we're able to do the capital fund transfer. So when we change some of these assumptions, we'll often trade one for another. And when we consider levies, I've been talking for 7 years about PI levies. So we'll see where that goes. So this is the picture that we have now, and we'll work with that as a live document as we learn more from the state and we get into levy planning. Always, risks and unknown. Big one, state budget. I should have made this plural because we're in a state budget now, and in this lifetime we're going to see 2 or 3 more state budgets, and we don't know what they're going to do. And contrary to what some people at the State House might say, well, we're going to do something. I always look at them and go, yeah, I don't know that. I might want to believe that, but what I know and what I believe are 2 different things. So what I know is I can't count on anything favorable. So, we flatline things. Transportation penalty litigation. When I wrote this, I didn't know what I know now about the litigation, as well as what's in the state budget as a potential fix. Negotiations, we're currently in bargaining. We have numerous sets of bargainings going forward. End of ESSER in 24. What do we do at that point? So you're going to hear more about that. And other legislation, either favorable or negative. Oftentimes we see more negative than favorable. But here recently I've mentioned to you about House Bill 1, which is attempting to eliminate rollback and change the assessment rate in the state of Ohio. We believe it has constitutional issues, and I don't know that it's going anywhere in its current state, but that's just another risk. So that's the 5-year forecast. It's a snapshot in time. We'll bring it to you for approval. And this is a live document for us right now. I mean, it's a living, breathing document that we work with on a regular basis. Like I said earlier, we throw stuff at Jordan, and he plugs in, and he comes back with results. We'll have to see, back in 16, we passed an operating levy, and then I filed a revised forecast. We'll have to see if anything happens that would require us to do that, especially if we're in levy planning. We may want to file a revised one, but I won't know about the state until late June, early July. And by August, we're going to start the November. So we'll have to figure that out. Or in August, somebody will have to figure that out. But that's where we are with the May update to the forecast. So you'll get it in 2 weeks for final approval. If you have any questions, fire away.
Vice President Vera.
Thank you so much for this report. Very, very helpful. I guess, at what point do you think we will know, like, the amount of money, obviously with ESSER funding going away? Do we know yet, or when will we know in terms of just how much of that funding that we are going to now have to figure out for positions that we're keeping? So I noticed at the beginning in terms of our personnel and, let me go back to that slide. Here we go, maybe. All right, so our salaries and benefits and non-personnel, I guess I just wanted to understand these numbers are not taking into consideration the positions that are presently being covered through ESSER, because we have not yet identified what positions we're keeping and kind of what that will look like. But is there, I guess at what point can we get a ballpark of how much additional money that is going to require in order for us to sustain those positions?
You're going to see that in the levy planning process.
Okay.
So over the next couple of months, you'll see that.
Okay, thank you.
Other questions?
I got a few.
Board Member Beckerly.
Under the property taxes, the 47.1 million reduction over the 5 years, what's driving that? Is that?
That's simply taking, we always use this year as a base to project forward. We do it settlement period by settlement period. So we were really, really close. We tweaked this, and I've said before, our conservativeness usually results in revenue coming in over and expenditures coming in under. So that's what I call organically addressing a deficit balance of a certain magnitude. So I look out 5 years, and we might project a $100 million deficit, and I know we can move $20 million very easily. So I don't get excited about that. It's the long-term trend beyond that 4 or 5 year period that I get worried about. This one, because we just simply look at settlement periods and use trends in settlement periods, it's not significant enough for us to drill down and say, was it the result of delinquencies? Was it a result of board revision? Well, what drove that? Because really, it's very, very close. I know it sounds like a lot, but it's very close for the hundreds of millions of dollars that we receive in property tax revenue. Okay. So we plugged in, the actual results that lowers those settlement periods, and then that's what we use to trend it out beyond that. Next year we could come in slightly above, and that trend just reverses itself.
But you're predicting over 5 years is going to be a negative.
Just because of the data I have now.
Because we're starting from a smaller number.
Right.
Data changes.
Yep,
Okay.
yep. And so what we do is we'll prepare next year's spending plan for the monthly reports, and we'll use this forecast. And so if we get to the August settlement, and the report comes in, and they'll come in and they'll say, look, when we did the projection, we based it upon these lower values for the collection periods, which is really the second half of 22 and the first half of 23. So now we'll see second half of 23 come in, and based upon doing a settlement period by settlement period, you'll see. If it comes in over, you go, oh, look, we've recovered a bit. Behaviorally, though, there's nothing in the details there that we can say is behaviorally different. If we were off by 20%, yeah, I'd question our methodology, but we're off 1 to 1.5%.
Okay.
The key part is it is not driving us to make a different decision about anything as of yet. That help?
Just seems like a lot of money, but I guess. And then the salaries and benefits, maybe you're gonna tell me the same answer here. 145.8 million reduction over 5 years. What's driving that?
Same premise. You're still basing your future years on a lower starting point. So when you're
The
doing
lower
a
starting
trend,
point
is because of where we're projecting to finish at the end of this year.
Because
So we're
we
projecting
can't
next year.
fill all the positions we have spots for.
In part, and in part because we conservatively estimate, we conservatively forecast.
Okay.
We do a lot of broad brush, assume a certain percentage for steps. That could be a little bit too high, but you always, we want that cushion in there. Now, again, if the 17.
We want some of that to go away because we want to fill these positions.
Sure, that's a behavioral thing.
Okay.
Not that I'm not worried about that, but if that happens, then we'll simply get closer to our estimate without tipping over and going over our estimates.
Okay.
See what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So we've got that movement in there. For that, I hate
Keep
to
in
say
mind,
cushion, but there's
and keep in mind, the numbers you're looking at are essentially a 4-year compilation of that impact. It's not a 1-year hit. It's over a 4-year cycle.
Right. No, yeah, I got that. All right, that's all I got for now. I reserve the right to call you and ask more questions.
Yes, you do.
Other questions? All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
All right, we're on item 8. Item 8.1 is notice of public hearing on the reemployment of retired employee Scott Nelson. Pursuant to Ohio Revised Code, Section 3309.345, the Columbus Board of Education gives notice that Scott D. Nelson, Area Superintendent, who will retire from the Columbus City Schools effective June 30th, 2023, is seeking reemployment with the Columbus City Schools as Area Superintendent effective August 1st, 2023. The board will hold a public hearing on June 20th, 2023 at 6 p.m. in the boardroom at 3700 South High Street on the issue of Mr. Nelson's reemployment. We will now move to our consent agenda. This evening, our consent agenda consists of items 10.1 to 25.3. Are there any items a member would like to remove for separate consideration? Seeing none, is there a motion?
I move we approve the consent agenda.
There's a motion to approve in the second. Are there any items a member would like to discuss? Seeing none, please call the roll.
Dr. Pierce?
With the exception of 13.2, 14.3, 14.4, of which I'm abstaining, yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Vera?
Yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you. We will now go into executive session. Vice President Vera, you have the motion.
I move that the Board of Education recess into executive session per section 121.22 G4 to prepare for, conduct, or review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment.
Thank you. There's a motion. Is there
Second.
a second? Please call the roll.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
Vice President Vera?
Yes.
President Adair?
Yes.
Ms. Beckerly?
Yes.
Brown?
Yes.
Dr. Pierce?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you. We will now adjourn into executive session. We will come back to officially adjourn the meeting in public session here, but it will not be televised. So good night to everyone, and thank you for all who attended. See you later.